Chapter 767. Ask Yevich to send us the details of the new island, and increase the search efforts in the surrounding waters to see if it is an archipelago. After confirming the location, we will go there tomorrow. List said and took Infant to the phoenix parasol tree. In the fire dragon bird's nest, 3 huge eggs were still lying quietly. Using magic eyes, he could see the fiery red light in the eggs, outlining the shape of the birds curled up together, which meant that these eggs were about to hatch. When he stirred up the dragon's combat energy and turned it into a flame to burn the eggs, he could clearly feel the cheer of the little life in the eggs. Infant also danced on the side, looking very excited. It was difficult to explain why there was such a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship between Infant and the fire dragon bird. The only connection was that both were fire elemental creatures. Fire dragon bird. Infant muttered some words that were not very familiar. Phoenix parasol tree, fire dragon Leo, List, Acroids, Parker, Ike, Ella. The eggs are about to hatch, List, the little fire dragon bird is about to come out. However, to Infant's disappointment, the fire dragon bird eggs suddenly stopped absorbing fire elemental combat energy when they were about to hatch. They had reached the daily absorption limit. It's a pity that I couldn't hatch the 3 birds in one go. List shook his head. At this moment, he thought of something and looked in the direction of the crater. A flame rose into the air and instantly turned into Leo's figure, then flew along the hillside, flew in front of List, and let out a majestic roar. Although the roar was loud, List noticed that his mood was full of resentment. "What's wrong, Leo?" "Roar." Leo told him that the magma in the crater had shrunk severely, and there were not many volcano supreme demons condensed, which meant that his cafeteria was about to close down. "Take me there. Take me with you." Infant beckoned. "Come here." List held Infant and jumped directly onto Leo's dragon tooth platform, then flapped his wings and flew to the crater. Infant stretched out his little hand and kept touching Leo's scales, and his little face showed an intoxicated expression from time to time. If it weren't for its cuteness, this kind of behavior would be very indecent. Flying close to the mouth of the volcano, Zhang Xian could already see the situation at the mouth of the volcano. Originally, the crater of the volcano was divided into 2 halves. One half had lava, and the other half had a hot water lake. However, the steam in the hot water lake was much smaller now, and the magma was almost invisible. The outer layer of the magma was only left with a trace of fiery red. The magma was cooling faster than List had imagined. As expected, the volcano of Dodo Island is going into hibernation. List frowned as he felt annoyed. Without the help of the volcano's lava, Leo would have to rely on potions to condense his supreme demon. Not only would his growth speed decrease, but he would also have to spend a large amount of potions to delay the development of the territory. However, he wasn't someone who liked to complain. Since the volcano on the Dodo Island had cooled down, List had to look for a new volcano. "Leo, don't worry. I will send a letter to the Sapphire Grand Duke and have him help you find a new crater within the range of Sapphire for your training. It shouldn't be difficult to rent a crater with magma." The difficult part was whether there was such a crater. Hearing this, Leo let out an unwilling roar and had no choice but to accept this reality. However, his eyes turned, and he quickly thought of something. He communicated with List in his mind. "I want to eat the body of the blazing dragon bird. There's 1 left, and 6 phoenix feathers. I want all of them." "You can eat the body of the blazing dragon bird, but not the phoenix feathers," List said without hesitation. Although the meat of the blazing dragon bird was highly nutritious, it tasted average. It would be a waste for him to eat it himself. After all, his body wasn't as strong as a dragon's and couldn't digest it completely. Giving it to Leo would maximize the benefits. He didn't know what the structure of a dragon's stomach was, but as long as food entered the stomach, it would be immediately broken down and absorbed. The human body couldn't do this, and the utilization rate of food was very low. Therefore, Leo could eat the meat of the blazing dragon bird, but not the phoenix feathers. He was going to keep it for research and pass it down as a family heirloom. After some bargaining, it was finally decided that Leo would only eat the meat and not the feathers. However, List soon discovered the cunning nature of the evil dragon Leo. He actually flew towards the phoenix parasol tree, wanting to eat the 3 eggs. Absolutely not. Roar! A human and a dragon stopped by the tree and stared at the bird's nest. They were in a stalemate. Infant didn't know what was going on. He was still fondling Leo's scales, smiling happily. He didn't dare to imagine the life of a fire dragon that he liked the most. The conflict of thoughts could be described as a flash of lightning. Only 1 second had passed in the outside world, but dozens of exchanges had occurred inside. List finally succeeded in suppressing Leo's greed and made him give up his desire for the blazing dragon bird eggs. Let's go quickly. Go back and drink the potions. Roar! Leo turned around. However, at this moment, he suddenly turned his head. While List wasn't paying attention, he spat a dragon's breath directly at the bird's nest. The scorching, boiling dragon's breath instantly enveloped the bird's nest. The bird's nest and the tree trunk, which wouldn't burn, were roasted by the dragon's breath. Kacha, kacha, kacha. The sound of 3 eggs cracking was especially clear in the midst of the dragon's breath. Impudent! List was furious. His will immediately rose and forcefully rushed into Leo's mind. There was still a volcano inside. At the mouth of the volcano lived a small fire dragon. The eyes of the small fire dragon were filled with evil. There were no words. List turned the smoke around his body into a 5-meter-long dragon spear. Then, he and the spear became one and pierced into the head of the small fire dragon like a flying immortal. The spear pierced through. The small fire dragon didn't have the strength to fight back. The volcano collapsed. The scene changed quickly. A new fire dragon was born. List also walked out of Leo's mind. At this time, Leo let out a soft roar to express his grievances. There was no longer a trace of arrogance, its evil thoughts had just been destroyed by List's spear and turned into pure new thoughts. List, who had successfully killed the fire dragon's evil thoughts, wasn't happy at all. This was because the dragon's breath had already roasted the 3 eggs to the point of breaking. It was all for naught. However, Infant suddenly flew out and excitedly pointed at the bird's nest that had been roasted by the dragon's breath. He shouted, "List, the fire dragon eggs have hatched." Huh! List then looked at the bird's nest again. He was surprised to find that not only were the 3 eggs not cooked, but they were also full of vitality. In his vision, the birds in the eggs had already begun to struggle, trying to break out of the eggshell. Their movements were getting bigger and bigger, and the already broken eggshell couldn't stop them from continuing to destroy. Chapter 768. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the egg finally cracked open, and a pink little bird poked its head out of the crack. It had no feathers, and its skin was purplish red, but it had already opened its eyes. Its pair of bird eyes were very intelligent. Soon after, the second little bird also poked its head out, followed by the third. In a flash, all 3 little birds broke their own eggs and let out chirping sounds, expressing their joy at being reborn. They slowly began to nibble on their own eggshells. Their half-finger-long beaks were agile and sharp, crunching the eggshells as if they were chewing biscuits. List, little bird, flaming dragon bird, so ugly, haha. Infant happily danced, flying around the nest. Hey, look, look, they've grown feathers. There was no need for Infant's reminder. List, who maintained his dragon rider mode, had been observing the 3 newborn flaming dragon birds with the vision of the dragon eye track. He was well aware of the changes to their bodies after eating the eggshells filled with fire magic power. The eggshells had all turned into magic power, helping them condense into feathers. The clearest was the condensation of tail feathers. The 7 still very weak tail feathers appeared in List's perception in a different way. So that's how it is this the birth of tail feathers? The fusion of the soul and magic power, the flaming dragon bird fused its soul with the tail feathers. Just like how dragons hide their souls in their teeth, super dragons also choose to hide their souls in a certain part of their body. The lightning turtle chose the turtle shell, and the flaming dragon bird chose the tail feathers. List had a lot of understanding, but in the end, he still felt that it was not enough. It's still a bit lacking. I still can't see the changes in the fusion of the soul and magic power clearly enough. I need more flaming dragon birds, I need more super dragons to pry into the secrets of the soul. He had always hated touching the soul, always feeling that it was a blasphemy against life. But at this moment, he realized that his lack of understanding of the soul made him unable to touch a higher level of the secrets of life. Perhaps the fusion of the soul and magic power was the training process after becoming a dragon knight. Looks like I still have to sponsor mages to research the soul. But there's no rush, I'm still young and have time. It won't be too late to slowly explore the soul in the future. While he was thinking, the 3 little flaming dragon birds had already eaten their own eggshells, and fresh, bright red feathers had grown out. Each of them was about the size of a large rooster, but their bodies were slender, and their feathers were more vigorous. Compared to the majestic appearance of the adult flaming draconic bird, the current little bird was more adorable. Clatter! 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 The 3 little flaming dragon birds finished eating the eggshells, grew feathers, and immediately spread their wings, ready to fly. After flying a few times in the nest, it flapped its wings and flew up. At first, it swayed and almost fell down. However, after flying for a distance, he was able to grasp the technique of flying very well and began to fly around the phoenix parasol tree. After a moment, the 3 little fire dragon birds flew back to little fire dragon Leo, circled him, and chirped happily. Infant joined in, laughing along with the birds. Roar! Leo released his dragon's might, and the 3 little flaming dragon birds instantly fell to the ground in fear. Only Infant had gotten used to the dragon's might and didn't faint. After the 3 little flaming dragon birds fell to the ground, they quickly got up and flapped their wings, ready to fly. Although they were just hatchlings, their bodies were very strong, and they weren't injured at all. Unfortunately, Leo kept releasing his dragon's might, and the 3 little birds couldn't fly no matter how hard they tried. Under the pressure of the dragon's might, they even showed signs of fainting. Retract your dragon's might, Leo. List couldn't bear to see Leo mistreating the little birds. Leo, who had just gotten rid of his evil thoughts, was very obedient. He immediately retracted his dragon's might and drooled at the 3 little birds. He still wanted to eat them. The flaming dragon birds were great nourishment for him, and he couldn't resist the temptation. However, the little birds treated Leo like their parents, and they immediately flew up and continued to circle around Leo. Roar! The drool in Leo's mouth quickly turned into steam and evaporated. He was indicating that the little birds had come to him on their own. They like you, so you can't eat them. I have to raise them. Leo, you should come back in. List was afraid that the little birds would continue to stimulate Leo's evil thoughts, so he simply let Leo return to his body. Leo disappeared. The little birds seemed to still be able to sense Leo's presence, and they began to circle around List again. He reached out his hand, and instantly a little flaming dragon bird landed on it, chirping at him. List, the little birds are so cute. Infant landed on his shoulder and said with a smile. So, Infant, what have you seen the flaming dragon birds eat? Looking at the little birds that kept opening and closing their mouths, List guessed that they were probably hungry. Without parents to feed them, List could only feed them himself. Big snakes, big cats, big lizards, big birds. Infant counted the things he had seen the flaming dragon birds eat with his short fingers. They were mostly World of Warcraft or wild beasts, carnivorous birds, and there weren't many special foods. He immediately took out a portion of World of Warcraft meat and threw it to a little bird. The little bird opened its mouth to catch the World of Warcraft meat and swallowed it. Then, it continued to open its mouth to ask for more. The other two flying little birds also landed on his arm, fighting to eat the World of Warcraft meat. List was very curious about feeding the three little flaming dragon birds, but he couldn't help but think of another bird. The winged peregrine falcon blessed curls. That low-level World of Warcraft that was unwilling to yield to him had flown off to God knows where, and he had never seen it again. I hope the three of you aren't ungrateful wretches. He fed them for a while, and when the three little birds were full, he prepared to return to the flame and bring the three little birds back to his territory. But this way, Infant would be lonely. There was no other creature on this island that could accompany him except for the sleeping light green gemstone dragon. Infant, the volcano of the Dodo Island is about to go dormant, and the concentration of fire magic here will decrease. Why don't you move your worm stalks back to Black Horse Island? Infant tilted his head, wavering. He liked places full of fire magic, liked the three little flaming dragon birds, and liked Leo even more. However, once the volcano of the Dodo Island went dormant, all of this would leave him. But at present, the island of the Dodo Island was still rich in fire magic, making it difficult for him to give up. Feeling Infant's dilemma, List did not force it. Why don't you live here first, and then move after the volcano of the Dodo Island goes dormant? Don't worry, when I build a country, my palace will be built on a volcano, and your worm stalks will be planted next to the palace. With the existence of the fire dragon Leo, the volcanic eruption was no threat to List. Leo would suppress the magma. When the fire dragon grew up, controlling the magma and volcanoes would be a piece of cake. Building a palace on a volcano would definitely be a very eye-catching miracle. Of course, the local climate could be a serious problem. No one wanted to eat and sleep with a stove. Everything would have to wait until after the country was built. Waving goodbye to Infant, List returned to the flame with the three little birds. Chapter 769. On the way, List named the three little flame drakes respectively, based on the color of their feathers, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple. The three little birds had a big appetite and were very picky. They only ate World of Warcraft meat and not ordinary beast meat. Moreover, List also found that they could also take potions. After drinking the potion, their breath soared rapidly. In this respect, they were indeed similar to dragons. No wonder they were classified as super dragons, with the powerful effect of dragon blood. In fact, when they were adults, they still had a good dragon power. This time, List left a lot of Leo's leftover flame drake's bones. Through the keel-fixing technology provided by Virginia Truth, the dragon bones could be induced to release dragon power. Although it was not comparable to Leo's dragon power, it should be enough to deter sea monsters in the sea. The ships of the Magic Goat family had thrived by relying on the keel-fixing technology. When the port town docks learned the manufacturing technology of three-masted sailboats, coupled with the longitudinal sail technology, ram technology, and keel-fixing technology, they would definitely be able to form a powerful fleet that could cross the sea, maintain the strength of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Eagle Kingdom, and dominate the sea. Little Red, don't run around. List looked at Little Red, who wanted to fly into the sea, and quickly scolded it, but Little Red did not know that it was called Little Red. It just looked back at List, who made the sound, and then plunged into the sea. However, the next moment, a small waterspout bound it and threw it back to the ship. That was a cheese method of controlling water. Within the range of seawater that she could control, it was very difficult for any creature to drown or escape. Cluck! Little Red flapped its wings and screamed. List got up and grabbed its neck. Behave! After subduing Little Red, Little Yellow and Little Purple also followed suit. List shook his head and said, I have to build a few bird cages when I go back. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to tame them to the level of obedience of Blizzard Beast. Super dragons are still very strong even when they are young. Even though it was only the first day that these 3 little fire dragon birds had hatched, any one of them had the ability to easily kill a normal person. With their sharp beaks, sharp claws, strong bodies, and agile speed, they were born to be predators. Big brother, maybe Infant knows the blazing dragon bird's language. We should let him participate in the blazing dragon bird's training, Achi suddenly said. I've observed and recorded Infant's different bird calls, and I've found that there's a very specific order to them. I've also communicated with Infant, and he does understand the meaning of different bird calls. Although the blazing dragon bird's language is relatively simple and limited, it's a very good way of communication. Did Infant really master bird language? List was surprised. Although he had formed a contract with this phoenix-perching parasol tree great sprite, their minds were connected. But there were too many elves, and there was no time to carefully sort out the thoughts of each elf. He had always thought that Infant's bird language was just unconsciously making random calls, just like the birds in the woods, making random calls every day, but it was not communication at all. Now that Infant had mastered the bird language, there was one more option to train the blazing dragon bird. List immediately said, let's train it first. If the 3 birds are good at obedience, then there's no need for Infant to do it. If the obedience is poor, then let Infant participate in the training of the birds. There was no hurry about training. List quickly shifted the topic to the fusion of the soul and tail feathers of the blazing dragon bird. He told Achi about his observations and was ready to promote the Guild of Magic's research on the soul at the right time. But when it came to the soul, List had another worry in his heart. Leo's evil thoughts were growing all the time. Cutting them off would keep them pure for a period of time, but after a period of time, they would rebreed. It was difficult to cut off the roots. Of course, when List was riding the dragon, Leo's evil thoughts could not cause any trouble. If it dared to come out, it would be cut off once. But once the day came when List's breath was weak, without the Dragon Knight's restraint, Leo's evil thoughts were bound to flourish and eventually become an evil dragon again. It was likely to bite back at List's offspring. The solution was simple. Throw the fire dragon into the wild forest and let it become a wild evil dragon. But it was a dragon after all. In the future, he would need to use its fire attribute to develop the industry. It would be a pity to abandon it. If I can contract the fairy dragon and gain eternal life, then Leo can always follow me. Forget it, why worry so much? My future is an infinite world. Maybe one day I will leave the country and travel to the other side of the legendary continent and the Devil's Sea, riding Leo and never coming back. It was hard to imagine being a king and staying in the palace all his life. Since riding the dragon, his heart had been wild. The world was so big, why not see it? When he didn't have the ability, he was satisfied with eating, wearing, and living well. When he had the ability, he naturally wanted to travel all over the world to enjoy different sceneries. Back at Black Horse Port, the territorial officials immediately transported the prepared supplies to the Flame. List had already used the magic platform to contact the magic platform of the Guild of Magic and gave the order to prepare the supplies. At present, there were not many magic platforms produced. The expedition fleet had 4, the Mage Tower had 2, the Thorn Castle had 1, and the Flame had 2. There were a total of 9 magic platforms. Among them, the expedition fleet's was Magic Platform 2. 0, and the others were Magic Platform 1. 0, a relatively simple version. These magic platforms were also testing machines. They would be constantly improved and optimized in the process of use, striving to achieve a more efficient communication effect when the Magic Platform 3.0 was designed. Then they would continue to optimize the coding and install self-destruction devices, security devices, and other means to prevent technical leakage. When the final design of the Magic Platform 4.0 was completed, it would be time for the Magic Platform to be widely used in the territory. List was prepared to complete the magic platform 4.0 when he rode the third dragon. With 3 dragons, in addition to himself and a Qi, there was no need to keep a low profile to dominate the ocean. Even if the magic platform 4.0 was exposed, no force would dare to snatch it. At the same time, boxes of supplies were loaded onto the ship. Fox, who served as the head of the Orders of Chivalry of Black Horse Island, had already prepared 3 night squads, ready to set out on the ship and go to the new island to explore in detail. The original head of the Orders of Chivalry of Black Horse Island, Marcus, officially handed over his position as the head of the giant algae city. Port Town was about to be upgraded to a giant algae city. List naturally had a lot of trust in his former home teacher. He intended to wait until he established the Burning Orders of Chivalry similar to the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry, and let Marcus serve as the first deputy head. When Emily grew up, Marcus would probably have a lot of achievements and could successfully retire to the second line. As a Sky Knight, Fox was a qualified successor to the Orders of Chivalry of Black Horse Island at this stage. When there was no war, he would lead the Orders of Chivalry to explore the new island. He could also make meritorious service, but the meritorious service was very small. Fox, rest for the night and set off at 7:00 tomorrow morning. You will have half a month to explore the new island and figure out the terrain and resources of the island. Chapter 770. The next day. The Flames set off on time for the new island. The nautical position of the new island has been marked, about 800 kilometers south and east of Black Horse Island and 400 kilometers away from the southernmost island of Sapphire. The Sapphire Grand Duke used to be known as the master of all the islands in the sea, but now it can't be counted as such. Except for the Sapphire Grand Duke, where the Sapphire Archipelago is located, the other islands are ownerless. List has now discovered the island, so he is the owner of the island. Only by strength can he decide the ownership of the island. A few minutes after the departure, the magic platform received new information. The Discovery Expedition ship found 2 new islands, one large and one small. The area of the large island is unknown, but from a distance, it may not be as big as Black Horse Island. The small island is only half the size of the large island. The 2 islands are very close to each other, and the opposite island can be seen from this island. In fact, with the islands found before, the 3 islands are not far away from each other. When a Qi translated the message, List suddenly smiled. Very good. He thought it would take a long time to complete the smoke mission, but he didn't expect it to be completed so quickly. The 3 islands have been found in 12 days. The expedition fleet set off on January 20th, and now it is February 2nd, exactly 12 days. Gently calling, the misty smoke invisibly appeared in front of him, like real smoke, like an illusory bubble, little by little forming a serpentine. Mission completed. Reward, agitation of rubber sprite worm triplets. How many times has the rubber worm triplets been agitated? Every agitation of the rubber worm seems to be related to a new worm stalk. One was agitated to produce fruit rubber, one was agitated to produce fan rubber, and one was agitated to produce ordinary rubber into spring rubber. So what will be agitated this time? Is it a new type of rubber tree, a rubber worm that is going to evolve, or even all of them? He was looking forward to the evolution of the rubber worm. Rubber was the most consumed in the construction of the territory and could be used in all walks of life. The construction industry needed rubber as a gel material, the carpentry industry needed rubber as an adhesive, and the military industry needed rubber as a solidification material. With the rapid development of the various industries in the territory, the use of rubber became more and more important, and its value also increased. The yield of the rubber plantation that the triplets planted was too low. Even if List often used the triplets to restore the rubber, it still couldn't meet the demand. We'll know why the triplets are so restless when we get back. He suppressed his thoughts and looked at the new content after the smoke changed. Mission: 3 new islands have been discovered. This is the new habitable island you have discovered after Black Horse Island. The dense forest proves that there are many creatures living on the island. Please survey the basic situation of the island. Reward, a harvest of many elves. Surveying a new island is an easy quest. But since I'm delivering elves, I should use my dragon's eyes to scan the plants on the island and see which elves are hiding. The elves in the forest might be eaten by World of Warcraft, but the elves on the island shouldn't be eaten. Some World of Warcraft ate elves. For example, List's chocobo, Loki, was caught by List because it wanted to eat the barley worm. Sprite worms in the forest were very likely to be found and eaten by World of Warcraft. However, there was no World of Warcraft on the island. For example, Black Horse Island did not have World of Warcraft, and several sprite worms were naturally born on the island. With these 3 newly discovered islands, he was naturally looking forward to having many sprite worms waiting to be contracted. It took Chi only half an hour to reach the designated area over a distance of 800 kilometers, but she did not find the specific location of the 3 islands. List summoned the little fire dragon Leo, flew high into the air and searched around, and found the 3 islands 20 kilometers away. From the air, the 3 islands formed an acute triangle in the shape of an awl. Moreover, there were many small islands and a large coral reef between the 2 islands that were close to each other. They barely formed a small archipelago. However, no traces of other islands were found outside this small archipelago. In order to facilitate the naming, List directly called the 3 islands 1, 2, and 3 islands from big to small. The flame landed on the first island and docked next to the Explorer. Compared with the narrow Palace speedboat Explorer, the Flame could be described as a big fat ship, 3 times wider than the Explorer. Yevich was not on the ship. He was exploring the island with the knight on board. However, Fox had led 3 knight squads and a large number of apprentice knight to the island. The following island exploration would be handed over to them. Orders of chivalry were given to explore the island's terrain and resources, while the apprentice knight was to establish a settlement on the island. It would be convenient for them to come to the island in the future. The knight began to work. List and Achi were also busy with their own matters. Achi needed to record the geographical location of the sea in detail, draw a standard nautical chart, and investigate the underwater reefs and undercurrents to determine the location of the future port. List rode the little fire dragon Leo and inspected the forest around the island under the admiring gazes of the knight. The first island was a lush green island. The temperature was very low, but there was no snow. It was far from the cold zone. The description of the 3 islands as habitable by the smoke mission was not accurate. The island as a whole was a mountain range on the sea. There was not even a flat area, making it very difficult to settle down and build a town. It was only suitable to be used as a freshwater replenishment point for the fleet to rest and reorganize. If fruit trees and vegetables were planted here, as well as some small animals, it would be a good replenishment point. At this moment, Dragon Eye Orbit was displayed. The forest on the island suddenly displayed a special color in List's field of view. The flowing wind, the growing trees, and the solid soil formed a picture of vigorous life. He was already accustomed to such a field of view. He carefully scanned the forest from above. He did not find the World of War's mana retroaction. There should be no World of War. After spending half a day, he carefully scanned the island from top to bottom and found a total of 7 places with mana retroaction. 4 of them were the lights of sprite retroaction, 2 sprite worms, and 2 sprite worms in the process of gestation. The other 3 places were also the lights of plants, but instead of gestation sprite worms, they were mutated potions. One of the small shrubs was a magic plant that List was very familiar with, bloodline fruit. A sage sprite worm, which can be dried and used as incense. A rootless vine sprite worm, which seems to be a harmful parasitic weed. The 2 sprite worms in the process of gestation are the pine sprite worm and the purple butterfly sprite worm. Both sprite worms are severely malnourished and will miscarry at any time. They need to be fertilized and nourished as soon as possible. After recording the locations, List first took away the rat-tail sprite worm and the rootless vine sprite worm, and then informed the trainee knight of the locations of the pine sprite worm and the purple butterfly sprite worm, letting the trainee knight go fertilize them. Then, he looked at the 2 potions. These 2 potions were individually mutated potions, without sprite worms or colonies. They could degenerate into ordinary plants at any time. A stalk of Lycoris potion, a stalk of Bhya. List carefully identified them and found that the stone garlic was a chaos potion, while the Bhya was a special light-attributed potion, one of the extremely rare types of potions in the natural world. Because light-attributed potions were too rare, there were only a few types of light-attributed potions recorded. Among them, the variant of the Bhya was called the light leaf Bhya, which was a very valuable type of potion. Chapter 771. The reason why light magic potions are so valuable is that mages need the blessing of light magic potions to study light magic. Otherwise, it is very difficult to rely on the mage's own affinity with light magic. Not only is it difficult to be compatible with light magic, but it is also difficult to be compatible with dark magic. The potions of these 2 attributes are very rare, so the price is high. It's a pity that I don't have ambergris. Not only the ambergris have no elves, but even the Lycoris have no elves. List could only dig up the 2 potions with their roots and soil, wrap them up and put them in the space ring. For plants without souls, the static effect of space can maintain their vitality. When he gets the Lycoris and ambergris, he will cultivate them again. 7 plants with mana retroaction light, the last one was a small shrub with a bloodline fruit. Seeing this fruit shining with yellow magic light, List was very excited. He had always hoped to find another bloodline fruit, preferably with earth magic, and then catch a group of flying dust dogs to breed and use the bloodline fruit to stimulate evolution in the puppy stage. Once the violent power of evolution is overcome, new blizzard beasts can be obtained. At that time, they can breed and mate with Dosan, thus creating a blizzard beast legion. In the future, his own burning orders of chivalry, each person will have a blizzard beast, and the siege will be too terrifying. Forget it, don't hold too much hope. The probability of failure of the bloodline fruit evolution is far greater than the probability of success. Not every time I can rely on the power of the smoke dragon to stir the threads of fate. List directly dug up the bloodline fruit with its roots and stuffed it into the space ring. He carefully observed the reaction of the bloodline fruit in the gem space. If the magic of the fruit is lost, he will quickly take it out. Fortunately, the fruit is static and cannot break through the invisible dragon space power. At present, only the fruit tree of will can break through the static of space power. So, the inspection of the island was completed. List continued to move towards the second island, his dragon eyes constantly looking for the mana retroaction light on the island. This island is 1/3 smaller than the first island. The first island is about the same size as the Black Horse Island, less than 2,000 square kilometers. The second island is about 1,300 square kilometers. As for the third island, List visually estimated that it is only about 500 square kilometers. However, the harvest on the second island surpassed that on the first island. There were only 2 glows of mana retroaction here, both of which belonged to the elves. But apart from the red tree sprite worm, there was also a lesser sprite. It was a lesser sprite that could only produce magic potions, an erect 100-tribe lesser sprite. Great praise. List was in an exceptionally good mood after contracting this little fellow with a big green leaf on its head. Camellia erecta was an ornamental plant. Many nobles liked to decorate their manors with Camellia erecta. A large patch of dark green Camellia erecta looked very spirited. On the other hand, ordinary people treated 100 roots erecta as a medicinal herb. Its roots had the greatest medicinal effect of killing insects. Head lice, body lice, and pubic lice could all be killed. On Black Horse Island, Yevich water peanut has 100 erect tribe sprite worm, which can be used to grow 100 erect tribe potions. Therefore, this upright 100 tribe wisp was a potion-type wisp. After contracting, harvesting cordyceps, and completing the search on the second island, it was only 3:00 in the afternoon. List continued to patrol the third island. The vegetation on the third island was also very dense, and the structure of the island was very rugged, densely covered with ravines. Such an environment was not habitable at all, but there were many birds living there. Perhaps there were too many birds that were eaten as soon as a sprite worm was born. There was no light of mana retroaction on the island. However, after List landed, he found that there were caves in many ravines. A skilled person is bold. He walked directly into the cave, and when he entered, he realized that he was wrong. This island was not an island of birds, but an island of snakes. The cave was densely packed with the light of mana retroaction of various snakes in World of Warcraft. There were earth, fire, water, wind, and thunder attributes, but there was a lack of light, dark, and ice attributes. However, the light of these snakes in World of Warcraft was very dim. It seemed that their magic was thin, so thin that they might not be able to release magic. No, it's not that their magic is weak, but that they are hibernating. List pulled out a few hibernating snakes from a small forked cave. These snakes had different magic attributes, but their patterns and colors were the same. They were some kind of khaki viper species. List had never seen this kind of viper, nor had he seen similar records. The same World of Warcraft with different attributes was also very strange. The vipers in List's hands quickly woke up from their hibernation. They were probably not in deep hibernation and could wake up at any time. Hiss! They wanted to bite List, but their heads were pinched and they could not bite. Venomous Fang is a viper. I wonder if it can be artificially raised. With so many snakes in World of Warcraft, it is an excellent source of World of Warcraft meat. He looked at the vipers in his hands and thought about how to make snake soup. Perhaps there is no need to raise them. Every year, I can catch a batch of snakes from this island and bring them back. In particular, these snakes needed to hibernate, so it would be effortless to come to the cave in winter to pick them up. During hibernation, their magic power was thin and they could not even release magic, making them almost no threat. This kind of viper is not long, and its tail is short and thick. I will simply call it short-tailed viper. He quickly grabbed a batch of short-tailed vipers and put them into the space ring. They were instantly killed. The snake blood, gallbladder, and meat were still as fresh as when they were alive. When I go back, I will let Mrs. Abby personally make snake soup. Her craftsmanship is getting more and more exquisite. I don't know how the snake soup made by this batch of short-tailed vipers tastes. After all, it is low-level World of Warcraft, so it should be delicious. He had eaten a wide variety of World of Warcraft and had already eaten experience that the higher the level of World of Warcraft meat, the better it was. On the contrary, low-level World of Warcraft meat often tasted the best. High-level World of Warcraft meat had hardened because the body was nourished by magic for a long time. Although it was very nutritious, it did not taste good. However, the taste of high-level World of Warcraft pups was different. The meat of the underage six-headed Hydra King was unexpectedly delicious. The snake meat was packed and taken away. List rode Leo and flew away from the third island. He continued to patrol the small islands between the second and third islands, but there was no harvest. However, the smoke mission was successfully completed. Mission completed. Reward: 1 erect 100 tribe sprite, 1 sage sprite worm, 1 rootless vine sprite worm, 1 pine sprite worm, 1 purple butterfly sprite worm, and 1 red tree sprite worm. 1 sprite, 5 sprite worms. In addition, there were 2 potion specimens, 1 bloodline fruit, and a large number of low-level World of Warcraft short-tailed vipers. The harvest on these 3 islands was very rich. Chapter 772. He returned to the flame to rest. List looked at the new quest. The Crystal Cyathea forest on the Heart Island has matured. Although the Eagle Kingdom's fleet hasn't discovered you, it's hard to guarantee that the Heart Island won't be discovered. The Crystal Cyathea forest is a clue. Please collect all the Crystal Cyathea. Reward, 1 Super World of Warcraft. Oh. List's interest was immediately piqued when he saw the details of the mission. Even if there wasn't a smoke mission notification, he still wanted to harvest all of the Crystal Cyathea forest. Crystal Cyathea ferns that had grown into crystals were priceless treasures. Just the crystals themselves were already extremely valuable. What he really cared about was the quest reward, a Super World of Warcraft. He had seen many different types of World of Warcraft, but he still hadn't seen Super World of Warcraft or high-level dragons. High-level dragons weren't a big deal since he had seen super dragons before. But what about Super World of Warcraft? He was really curious. Will it have a change in nature similar to the super dragons? There were no traces of Super World of Warcraft in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and there weren't many records of Super World of Warcraft even in the legendary continent. Compared to the super dragons that often appeared in the legends, Super World of Warcraft was more low-key. Perhaps the authors of night novels were naturally biased against species that didn't have the bloodline of dragons. As a result, Super World of Warcraft was almost unheard of. List was the only Super World of Warcraft that he had come into contact with, and it was from a vampire. Back at the trapped Dragon Mountain iron mine, he had killed the pureblood Famule and found a tooth on him. According to Mary, it was a magical equipment passed down in the Black Knight family, Super World of Warcraft, blood-sucking bat Fong. The Fong was still in his spatial ring. Although he couldn't use the vampire equipment, he could use it as a reward for the blood servants in the future. He thought. Taking out the bat's fangs and fiddling with them, List felt the abundant blood magic power within and recalled Mary's introduction. The fangs of the vampire bats not only had a strong boost to the cultivation and spellcasting of vampires, but they could also be used to perform a blood exchange ritual and improve the purity of the pureblood's bloodline. According to Mary, as well as Horo's and Bruce's introduction of the Black Knight family, it seems that the first vampires were closely related to blood-sucking bats. It's possible that a mage was bitten by a blood-sucking bat and slowly turned into a first-generation vampire, creating the vampire spellcasting profession. Unfortunately, with the decline of the weave, the profession of spellcasters declined, and civilization was broken. Dragon Continent, spellcasting profession declined with the spellcasting. We'll find out what's so special about super magical beasts when the time comes. However, no matter how special they are, there's a limit to it. Even super dragon beasts are nothing more than this. The Black Knight family didn't know where it came from. When night fell, a Chi returned from the sea, happily holding a sprite worm. Brother, a Chi contracted a sprite worm from the bottom of the sea, but I don't know what kind of worm stalk it is. She also brought along the same kind of water plant as the worm stalk, a long green ordinary water plant. List also didn't know what kind of species it was. Humans knew very little about the sea, so the water plants, algae, and the like in the sea had no official names. So far, among the sea sprites contracted by List and a Chi, only the giant seaweed sprite had been developed and produced a large amount of giant seaweed potion. The other sprites hadn't been developed much. Even the edible kelp and seaweed cultivated by kelp worms and seaweed worms hadn't been systematically developed. Not to mention the redstone flower worm, horsetail worm, and black horn worm, which were just casually planted in the sea and allowed to grow on their own. As there were more and more sprites, List, like many great aristocrats, no longer paid much attention to sprite worms. The sea sprites had not been focused on for a long time, it didn't make much sense to attack them. Humans were not marine animals and it was difficult to develop crops in the sea. Just the giant seaweed farming industry alone required a large number of serfs to travel to the sea every day and risk drowning in giant seaweed entanglement. It could only be said that the development of the sea could not be rushed. The equipment for the sea had to be developed and the skills of the fishermen had to be cultivated, so that the sea could be turned into a treasure little by little. A chi, you name its species. List said casually. Let's call it water grass. The name didn't mean anything. After returning to the territory, List immediately issued an order for the caravan to go to various places to buy flying dust dog puppies. He wanted female puppies. He wanted to find a companion for Dosun. As for the free-range stupid woman, she was old and had no potential. Eating the bloodline fruit would also result in a sudden death. Dosun was upright and strong, and the quality of his bloodline was far better than his 8 descendants. He was the most suitable to breed the blizzard beasts. If it is feasible, I will have to search for more bloodline fruits in the future, cultivate more blizzard beasts, and expand the population gene so that the blizzard beasts can reproduce on their own. A hybrid of a black blood horse and an ordinary horse was used to arm ordinary orders of chivalry. The black blood horse was used to arm the burning orders of chivalry. The blizzard beasts were used to arm the elite orders of chivalry and the burning orders of chivalry. He even fantasized about waiting for Chris to sum up the future of the light swordsman's practice. He would also use Leo to train a group of fire swordsmen, and then ride the flame dragon bird to form a more elite guard, the orders of chivalry. Of course, it would take time to form these orders of chivalry. After he issued the order, he quickly gathered a group of serfs with excellent logging skills, plus Brad and other crystal craftsmen, boarded the flame, and set off for the Heart Island the next day. After landing on the island, he first investigated. He found that the big pit where the mind fruit tree originally grew had not sprouted. It may be that all the seeds of the mind fruit tree have been dug away, making it impossible for new mind fruit trees to grow here. What a pity, what a pity. Now we can only see if the dead wood of the mind fruit tree can cultivate new mind fruit trees. List shook his head, and then turned his eyes to the crystal Cyathea. A chi often went back and forth to the Heart Island to record the growth and changes of the crystal Cyathea. At present, the Guild of Magic was trying to find ways to cultivate new crystal Cyathea. The crystal Cyathea that could grow without the magic power of the dragon had not yet been cultivated, but the large number of seeds stored should be enough to slowly consume. Try to dig away all the crystal Cyathea, not leaving a single one. List ordered the logging team. Although the serfs were curious about this beautiful tree, they naturally worked hard under the orders of the Lord. They dug, cut, and then handed it over to Brad and other crystal craftsmen to cut and load. Chapter 773. Facing the large number of crystal Cyathea trees on the island, Brad wiped the sweat from his forehead and felt an unprecedented sense of motivation. As a crystal craftsman, he started by polishing telescope lenses and got to know the great Lord List Flame Highness. However, the process was not smooth. After polishing the crystals in the castle warehouse, he could only work with volcanic glass. After finishing the volcanic glass carving, he did not work for a long time. Although the Sir Lord still paid him, he could not earn more. Compared to when he was in Coral City, his living conditions had declined. However, after the Sir Lord became a Dragon Knight, his mentality quickly changed. To be able to become a member of the Dragon Knights Craftsmen, this honor was worth it even if he starved to death. What's more, the current situation was obviously not enough for him to starve to death. On the contrary, he might even die of exhaustion. Such a magical tree, the whole tree is made of crystal, pure natural crystal, simply incredible. I'm afraid that even if I were to carve for decades, I wouldn't be able to finish carving all the crystals in this crystal Cyathea forest. It seems that I should consider entering the craftsman department of the Knight Academy and train more crystal craftsmen for the Sir Lord. When there was no work, craftsmanship was the guarantee of life, and no one was willing to teach it carelessly. Especially free craftsmen, who regarded craftsmanship as a family treasure, more important than their own lives. In the past, Brad was unwilling to enter the craftsman department and teach his skills. But now, looking at the countless crystal Cyathea trees, his ideological awareness suddenly rose to another level. As a crystal craftsman of the Dragon Knight family, he did not have to worry about living, so how could he be like a small craftsman in the marketplace who treasured his craft? He looked up. He saw an apprentice craftsman laboriously cutting a branch. He could not help but walk over and say, "Jolia, your cutting technique is wrong. You should reverse the knife and rely on the force of the swing to dissolve the special toughness of the crystal, not simply rely on the strength of your hands to cut. I'll show you to turn it over, look carefully." "Ah, yes, Mr. Brad. Follow me and learn well. There are so many crystals here to practice, strive to become a qualified crystal craftsman as soon as possible." "Yes, thank you, Mr. Brad, for your teaching." Jolia did not understand why Craftsman Brad, who used to be very stingy and refused to let go of his craft, was so generous today, but he was sincerely grateful. Jolia will study hard and will not let Mr. Brad down. Brad's expression turned serious and he said piously, "No, Jolia, you should be thanking Sir Lord. It was Sir Lord who brought us all a chance to live happily ever after." "Yes, thank you, Sir Overlord. Sir Overlord is the greatest lord." In the past, Xiao Lia only dared to eat 2 meals a day, but now she eats 3 meals a day. Sometimes, when she works overtime, she even eats a midnight snack. Civilians were like that. Perhaps they didn't know any great principles, but they would thank whoever could help them live a good life. The Lord, who was grateful to the commoners, was gesticulating with his hands. If the Crystal Cyathea forest wasn't completely harvested, Super Warcraft probably wouldn't appear due to the threads of fate, so he relaxed and started thinking about the third technique of the Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon's Aura secret technique. As he sorted out the inspirations in his mind and compared the techniques of the Sapphire Dragon Knight, Dragon's Aura secret technique, with the Light Green Gem Dragon Knight, Dragon's Aura secret technique, he quickly figured out the third ultimate technique of the Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon's Aura secret technique. This technique was similar to the Charge of the Night. As a person from the civilized era, his vision surpassed the entire world and the entire era. As long as he thought about it seriously, there was no problem that he couldn't solve. In the end, the trajectory of the technique had been calculated, and the corner of his mouth curled up. "Good, it's done. Since this technique is a charging technique, when the dragon's aura explodes, it can definitely swallow anything in front of it. Then, I'll call it Swallow the Sun." After the Dragon Slash technique, the Burn the Heavens technique, the Swallow the Sun technique was born. Little Fire Dragon Leo sensed his call. It directly rushed out of its body and turned into a fire dragon with a wingspan of 26 to 27 meters. After eating the corpse of the second flame dragon bird, it grew up again. However, without the phoenix feathers replenishment, its growth rate was much smaller than before. Roar! Leo roared, and all the workers on the Heart Island were so scared that they crawled on the ground. List leaped up and rode on Leo's dragon tooth platform. In an instant, he became one with his soul and soared into the blue sky. He tried to charge on the clouds and used the new technique, Swallow the Sun. The dragon spear turned into a vent for the dragon's aura, and the dragon's aura exploded as it charged forward, evaporating all the clouds within a radius of 100 meters. Accompanied by a series of sonic booms, the entire sky shook, and the few clouds showed signs of collapsing. The workers on the Heart Island, who had just recovered from Leo's aura of the dragon, suddenly heard the thunder in the sky above them, and they were so scared that they dropped their saws and machetes. After waiting for a while and seeing that there were no more movements in the sky, they returned to normal and started to work. After a while, List rode on Leo and flew back from afar. As soon as he landed, he turned into a ball of flames and returned to List's body, forming a new picture of a fire dragon. List stood on the rock and enjoyed the wind for a while before returning to the flame in a flash. With a few flashes, he returned to the blazing roar. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, who were already locked up in the birdcage, immediately started chirping. The 3 chicks were full of affection for List, who had Leo's aura, and they were as close to him as if they had seen their parents. It was just that they were less obedient during training, far less relaxed than when List trained Dosen. However, the 3 chicks displayed high intelligence. When they were locked up in the cage previously, there was no lock and only a latch. Who knew that the 3 chicks would effortlessly pull out the latch and fly out to rebel in the cabin of the flame? Although they were beaten up by List in the end, their intelligence made him see the potential of the 3 chicks. The smarter a species was, the easier it was to tame them. Once tamed, they would be far more cooperative than creatures with low intelligence. Perhaps one day, he could really build an orders of chivalry that rode on a fire dragon bird. The more intelligent a species was, the easier it was to tame them. Once tamed, they would be far more cooperative than creatures with low intelligence. When the cage was opened, the 3 chicks landed on the designated feeding rack. List began feeding them pieces of World of Warcraft meat. The cage lock opened and the 3 chicks landed on the designated feeding rack. List began feeding them pieces of World of Warcraft meat. This was the meat of a short-tailed venomous snake. Last night, Mrs. Abby had made a few snake stews, but the taste wasn't as delicious as he had expected. Therefore, he simply fed it to the birds. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, and the crystal cyathea forest, which wasn't very big to begin with, was finally completely harvested by the laborious labor of the workers. Even the roots were dug up and taken away. The smoke serpentines in front of List's eyes immediately changed. Chapter 774. Mission. Thanks to the efforts of the mangrove sprite, Nami, the mangrove forest in the territory has flourished. The domesticated mallard ducks and flamingos have also multiplied and strengthened, providing the territory with a steady stream of food in World of Warcraft. The arrival of its kind has increased Nami's enthusiasm for work. Please provide it with more mangrove forest. Reward, mutated species of mangrove. This was a new smoke mission. It was a rare mission related to Nami. List was a little surprised, as Nami was not a sprite that he had directly contracted, but rather a chi sprite. A chi was busy with all kinds of experiments all day long and did not care enough about Nami. Furthermore, Nami was very hardworking and had very little daily communication. There were many times when List almost forgot about Nami. After all, Nami spent far more time in the wilderness than in the worm house. Does it mean the mangrove sprite worm? List remembered that he had casually placed the mangrove sprite worm in the mangrove forest at the mouth of the Red River in Red River Town. Nami had probably discovered the mangrove sprite worm when she came over to take care of the ducklings. It is truly a rare sprite to work enthusiastically when it is happy. Rest assured, there is a large mangrove forest on the island. Nami can also go over and take care of it from time to time. Let's see if we can raise a batch of green caterpillars and mallard ducks there. He put away his thoughts. After all the workers had boarded the ship, he signaled a chi to set off. When the flame left the shore, a chi directly jumped into the sea and stood on a waterspout. Then, as if countless dragons were roaring in the calm sea, countless waterspouts rose from the sea and fiercely crashed into the Heart Island. Rumble, rumble, rumble. They continuously scoured the soil layer of the Heart Island, cleaning the holes left by the crystal cyathea fern and any man-made traces, returning the Heart Island to its original state. After a moment, the Heart Island changed its appearance and all the unnatural aura disappeared. A chi returned to the ship. Brother, the Heart Island has been cleaned. Now, even if it is discovered, no one will be able to find any traces of the light green gem dragon. Well done. List smiled. The Eagle Kingdom had never given up the search for the light green gem dragon. Perhaps they would find this island sooner or later. But now, even if they found the island, they would only treat it as an isolated island in the sea. Of course, to avoid accidents, a chi still had to come often to see if there would be new fruit trees sprouting. Let's go. The blazing flame was reactivated. Like a large plane on the sea, it whistled through the heavy waves. List soon realized the greatness of the power of fate. While sailing, a huge seabird swooped down on him. It was pitch black in color, resembling an albatross with a wingspan of 20 meters. It's World of Warcraft. List made a prompt decision. He told Achi to stop the flame and work with him to capture the Super Warcraft. Then, he summoned Little Fire Dragon Leo and flew into the sky. Super World of Warcraft, which was flying leisurely, was shocked by the dragon's might and almost fell into the sea. But before it could react, countless waterspouts rose from the sea and pulled it in. Then, List rode the fire dragon down from the sky and pressed it into the sea. The pitch-black albatross struggled wildly, stirring up the sea. Unfortunately, it was facing a dragon knight and a magic shooter. Even the two adult super dragons were no match for them, let alone it. Now that it fell into the sea, it was completely at Achi's mercy. Even though its body was larger than the blazing dragon bird and almost the size of Little Fire Dragon when it was born. Gua gua. The pitch-black albatross was soaked powerlessly in the sea, struggling from time to time. It was a water attribute World of Warcraft, so it did not choke and could hold its breath underwater. When it stopped struggling violently, List could take action. He took out the orichalcum shackles that were used to bind the blazing dragon bird and bound its feet. Its neck was a little short and thick. The orichalcum shackles could not bind it, and its wings were also difficult to bind. List glanced at it, wondering if he should break its wings to prevent it from escaping. But he decided against it. This pitch-black albatross was much weaker than the blazing dragon bird. If it was a human knight, it might not even be able to defeat Marquis Wildwave. There was not much difference in the strength of Super Warcraft and Advanced Warcraft, except that the latter had more magic power. Gua gua. Facing the two thugs, the pitch-black albatross, bound by the orichalcum shackles and the water current, let out a cry of grievance. It was just casually flying close to the surface of the sea. Who knew it would be caught by the dragon knight and a magic shooter? What did it have to enjoy such treatment? But fate was always so unexpected. The pitch-black albatross that used to roam the sea was destined to meet such a calamity. Achi returned to the bow and steered the flame forward while dragging the pitch-black albatross to keep up. List, on the other hand, returned to Leo's back and used Dragon Eye Orbit to carefully observe the situation of the pitch-black albatross. He mainly observed its magic power and found that it was very dense, but still belonged to a low-level magic power. Low-level water magic power is evenly distributed. There's nothing special about it. Did I guess wrong? Did Super Warcraft itself not have any special characteristics? Why does the fangs of the bloodthirsty bat have such dense blood magic power? Without an answer, List could not hide his disappointment. He had thought that Super Warcraft would be magical and could pry into many secrets about magic power. But when he got the real Super Warcraft, he realized that it was just a normal World of Warcraft with more magic power. Since there are no characteristics, the pitch-black albatross is not as valuable as I thought. Why don't I kill it and eat its meat? Forget it, the meat of Super Warcraft is definitely not delicious. Should I raise it and let it breed smaller World of Warcraft, or should I break it down into magic materials? After thinking for a long time, he suddenly remembered. I saw two big whales on the way to Dodo Island. Now it seems that those two big whales might really be Super Warcraft. But there are no characteristics, so it's hard to distinguish between Advanced World of Warcraft and Super Warcraft. The two big whales could be considered Advanced World of Warcraft, or Super World of Warcraft. In short, it was a very powerful World of Warcraft. List's thoughts returned to the pitch-black albatross. I keep saying that I want to get a mount for the oxtail Marquis, but the split-footed lizard ran away. Should I give this pitch-black albatross to the Marquis to tame? The Marquis is already a Sky Knight, so he might be able to tame it. The pitch-black albatross was not good-looking, but it looked very cold. It was obviously a world of warcraft that could fly in the sky, walk on the ground, and even swim in the sea. It was very suitable as a mount. Moreover, Super Warcraft's magic attack and physical attack were not to be underestimated. If it was put on the market, even the Sapphire Grand Duke would be tempted. "I'll give it to the Oxtail Marquis," he decided after careful consideration. Chapter 775. Gifting a super magical beast to his father, Lee William, was not a big deal regardless of whether it was from the perspective of benefits or from the perspective of kinship. After all, the Tulip family and List were tied together, and the blood connection was difficult to sever. Of course, family ties and benefits had their limits. List still had an unused light emerald dragon that no one rode. But he could not bear to give it to Oxtail Marquis. The strategic value of a dragon was too great. In fact, even if he dared to give it to the Marquis, Lee William might not dare to accept it. Dragons were arrogant by nature, and not everyone could ride them. Humans were just a bunch of ants to dragons. Humans who had yet to become a Sky Knight at the age of 16 were even scum among the ants. Becoming a Sky Knight before the age of 16 was barely a stronger ant, and qualified to get close to a dragon. This was also the standard of the Continental Kingdom Dragon Knight selection plan. It was impossible for a loser to ride a dragon successfully, so there was no need to waste resources to train them. Even for a talented knight, only 1 in a million could ride a dragon successfully. One had to go through many hardships to complete the dragon's test, gain the favor of the dragon, and qualify for the Battle of the Soul. Only by winning the Battle of the Soul could one truly be recognized by the dragon and successfully ride a dragon. Since ancient times, Dragon Knight had always been favored by the heavens. Only List was an exception. His talent was only average. If not for the enigmatic dragon's soul fruit, he would not have been able to conquer Leo's heart with his charm. If not for the light emerald dragon's serious injury and the blessing of the power of fate, he would not have been able to destroy the mark of the first-generation Dragon Knight. He still had 3 enigmatic dragon's soul fruits, but he could not waste them on Oxtail Marquis. The Marquis was not young anymore, and could not ride a dragon for many years. The enigmatic dragon's soul fruit was used to ride more dragons, and not wasted on a dragon that had already been ridden. The only knight who was qualified to ride a dragon purely based on his talent and soul was probably Emily, whom he was currently training. She started training at the age of 11, became an Earth Knight at the age of 12, and soon became an elite Earth Knight, charging towards the Sky Knight. Only this kind of talent could win the favor of the dragon. But Emily still needed more effort to prove herself. From the bits and pieces of historical information that were currently known, it could be concluded that there had never been a female Dragon Knight in the legendary continent. It was still unknown whether the light green gemstone dragon would acknowledge Emily in the future. Actually, no matter what, I still haven't acknowledged the father-son relationship between me and William. List had a rare chance to examine his inner thoughts. My worldview was fixed before I transmigrated, so it's hard for me to integrate into another family. Plus, my predecessor always seemed to have a knot in his heart. To be honest, his predecessor did not have a high status. His older brothers, sisters, and younger brothers all looked down on him. Lee William might have liked him a lot when he was young, but as Qin Ye's innate talent was revealed, Lee William became colder and colder, which left a huge shadow in Qin Ye's previous life. However, this shadow was not because someone was bullying him, but because his family's attitude made him feel the coldness of aristocratic kinship. Lee William did not treat him harshly. When he came of age, he did not chase his second son out to fend for himself like other nobles. Instead, he was given the title of Flower Town Baron, a small fief that could be self-sufficient, fulfilling his duties as a father. However, his predecessor was more willing to regard this as pressure from his grandfather. Marquis Merlin was one of the Grand Duchy's 7 great marquises. When his grandson came of age, Li William had to take the other party's attitude into account. As a small town's baron, his reputation was pretty good. During the formative years of my predecessor, the Tulip family made him feel cold, and even Madame Penelope was no exception. Marquis Merlin was probably his only hope, as he had never given him a cold look. I have inherited my predecessor's memories, and I indeed feel that Marquis Merlin treats his grandson with the most sincerity. As an adult, Liszt would not be easily influenced by a child's memories. He had his own ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Of course, he would not be cynical because of his indifference, but he had his own limits. The person closest to him was always Marquis Merlin, not Li William or Madame Penelope. Whether it was Li William or Madame Penelope, it was only after he showed his talent that they became enthusiastic. If I knew how to contract a Lord of the Dragon Field, would probably let Marquis Merlin try to contract a light emerald dragon. Unfortunately, the Grand Duke does not know how to contract a Lord of the Dragon Field. At that time, the madwoman, Curtis Truth, did not leave behind any clues about the Lord of the Dragon Field. I can only do my best to shelter the Taro family. The true Lord of the Dragon Field's contract method might have completely disappeared along with the ghost ship incident and the annihilation of Curtis' soul. At that time, only the inferior lich technique was passed down, ultimately prompting the Marquis Bull to launch the dragon-slaying incident. In any case, the past was the past. Liszt did not need to care about the past that did not belong to him. He was now a brand new person, with a brand new social network and a brand new interpersonal relationship. He could act according to his own will. Moreover, from the moment he changed his surname to Flame, he had already separated from the Tulip family. Everything he had belonged to the brand new Flame family. A World of Warcraft was enough to show his sincerity. As for the dragon, it was definitely out of the question. In fact, even super dragons were out of the question. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Black were obviously more eye-catching than the pitch-black albatross. They would be stronger when they were adults, but he had no intention of giving them away. He would rather keep them for his followers to ride. Soon, the Flame arrived at Black Horse Port. When they saw the huge pitch-black albatross, the dock workers only looked at it curiously for a moment and then continued to work. They were people who often saw dragons, and they did not think that a big black bird was anything to look at. The pitch-black albatross was quickly dragged to the open space around Thorn Castle and tied with a thick iron chain. In fact, the iron chain could not tie it, but Liszt released Leo and looked at the pitch-black albatross. It was looked at differently by a dragon. The pitch-black albatross was very moved, so it did not dare to move at all. Send a message to Tulip Castle, tell the Marquis Oxdale that there is a World of Warcraft bird suppressed in Thorn Castle, and ask him if he wants to subdue it as a mount. Liszt sent a retainer knight to deliver the message. Then he asked a Chi to take Nami to the newly discovered island of Mangrove Forest to see if she could manage the mangrove forest. A Chi, I know you are very busy, and the Guild of Magic cannot do without you. But Nami also needs to be more concerned. I feel that she has the potential to evolve. Since the smoke mission was issued for Nami, it was obvious that Nami had the potential to affect the power of fate. Chapter 776. This chapter is a reward for the leader, Mewling Voice. 1 chapter for now and 10 more chapters in the future. Marquis Oxdale stood on the balcony, basking in the sun. He had recently returned from the Blue Sky Palace negotiations, mainly to help Liszt obtain the Sapphire Grand Duke's help. The project involved many things, including resources, technology, and talents. If not for Liszt, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would have perished in the battle of dragon slaying. Therefore, the generous reward was not an exaggeration. The Sapphire Grand Duke naturally understood. Now that Liszt and a Chi had teamed up, he admitted that he would not be able to hold them off. Therefore, he could only pay to send the god away. The last negotiation brought him the manufacturing technology of the palace's fast sailboat. This time, he brought the Iron Knight training technology and an Iron Knight family. This Iron Knight family was migrating, preparing to serve under List and follow the new Dragon Knight. Watching the Flame family grow stronger bit by bit, I feel very gratified. When Madame Marie walked out of the room, Lee William sighed. Although it was not the Tulip family that became the dragon-raising family, List's Flame family is a branch of the Tulip family. They have the same glory. Yes, the family is thriving. Many noble ladies are envious of us. This shows that you had a good eye. Lee William smiled proudly. After Melissa's death, he met Madame Marie. Madame Marie was famous for her beauty, so she had two choices. One was to marry a viscount far away from the island, and her son would inherit the title in the future. The other was to marry Lee William, who had lost his wife in his middle age, and his son would not be able to inherit the title. In the end, Madame Marie did not consider her son and chose Lee William to become the new countess. Perhaps it was because of this debt that Lee William took good care of Lytton. However, fate had always favored the beautiful. List's sudden appearance had caused William Lee's status to rise, and he had already become a marquis. Madame Mary had profited greatly. In the future, when Lytton came of age, he would be conferred the title of Viscount easily, and even the title of Earl would not be difficult. It was difficult for the eldest son, Levis, to complain, because Lee William's family business was not inherited, but earned by himself. Naturally, he could give it to whoever he wanted. If Lee William inherited his father's title of Marquis, then according to tradition, he would have to pass on all his properties to his son. He could only be regarded as an inheritor of the family and had no right to divide the family's assets as he pleased. However, Lee William had inherited the title of Viscount. He had earned the title of Earl and Marquis by himself, so he had the right to decide how to enfeoff them. In this era, the eldest son inherited all the properties, and it was normal for the second son to leave home empty-handed. But the rules were dead, and people were alive. Naturally, they could be used flexibly. Of course I have good taste. Madame Mary smiled with satisfaction. But the young ladies from the noble families have better taste. They all have their eyes on List. Lee William snorted. Don't bother with the young ladies from the small islands. List is the Dragon Knight and the future ruler of the country. His marriage partner should be a real princess from the mainland kingdom. The establishment of Xian also requires the support of the kingdom. I'm just afraid that List won't agree. You know, his sister is not ordinary. This. Sigh, it's none of our business. Whether it's the princess or the magic shooter, it's List's personal business. We don't need to worry about it. Lee William said hesitantly. The princess could help Xian gain support from the kingdom, but the magic shooter could also control the fate of a country. Not a good choice. Not to mention. He also understood that List was a very assertive person. Marriage wasn't something he could arrange at will. As a father, he had to rely on his son. Just then, the butler Silva knocked on the door. Master, the messenger knight from Thorn Castle has arrived. Invite him over. Lee William instructed. Immediately after, he turned to Madame Marie and said, "Go to the kitchen and take a look. I want to eat flamingo meat for lunch. Let Mrs. Phyllis have some snacks while cooking. The taste of Tulip Castle's dishes is a lot worse than Thorn Castle's." Madame Mary left the balcony. The messenger knight quickly came over, saluted and said, "Sir Marquis, His Royal Highness asked me to tell you that he has recently captured a World of Warcraft Dark Albatross. It is suppressed in Thorn Castle. If you want to tame it as a mount, you can try to tame it in Thorn Castle." World of Warcraft. How could Lee William sit still? He almost jumped up. What are you waiting for? Let's go. He didn't care about the flamingo meat for lunch. He rode the Black Blood horse and set off directly to Flower Town. At 3:00 in the afternoon, he arrived at Flower Town. There was a night ship to Black Horse Island, so he boarded the merchant ship with the retainer knight. After wandering for more than 10 hours, they arrived at Black Horse Port in the early hours of the morning. Before dawn, they hurriedly arrived at Thorn Castle. List woke up from his sleep. When he went downstairs and saw Li William pacing, he couldn't help but complain, "Father, why are you so anxious?" "List, my son, you don't understand how I feel." William Li pulled him away. "Let's go. I've already carefully examined that pitch-black albatross. It really is a powerful super-magical beast. However, I'm not confident that I can successfully tame it. I'll need your help. Don't worry, I will suppress this big bird." They quickly came to the place where the dark albatross was tied. The east had just risen, and the dark albatross had already woken up. It hadn't eaten for a day, but it was still full of energy, Dosen. It was just that Leo was sleeping soundly, so it didn't dare to move. "It's so beautiful. Look at the black feathers, the wide flippers, the hooked beak, and the cold eyes." Seeing such a majestic world of Warcraft, Li William felt even more excited than when he was promoted to a perfect Sky Knight. This was a dream he had since his childhood. Cluck! Screech! Suddenly, a few bird cries came from a distance, and then 3 birds with fiery red feathers and the size of a big rooster flew around Leo. One of the birds with slightly light yellow feathers, after a few laps, came to stand on List's shoulder, chirping as if to please List. "This is?" Li William looked at the 3 little birds in surprise. He felt as if he was looking at 3 fireballs. The vigorous fire element magic actually brought him a faint sense of pressure. This was the natural suppression of high-level magic on low-level magic. Although the 3 little birds were small, their magic was of a high level. "Oh, them," List said casually, "they are the legendary semi-dragon phoenixes. However, the semi-dragon classification is not objective enough, and it is far from being a dragon. Super dragons are still part of World of Warcraft, so I gave them a new name, Fire Draconic Bird. Phoenixes." Li William was stunned, and then his eyes widened. "You said they are phoenixes? Semi-dragon phoenixes? They are second only to dragons? You have 3 phoenixes?" Chapter 777. Leo likes to eat it? The Marquis squinted his eyes, trying his best to look more shocked to express his rejection of the news. "So, you're raising a phoenix for Leo to eat?" List glanced at the excited Marquis. He had a rough idea of what Li William was thinking. Although a super magical beast was a flashy mount, it was nothing compared to a draconic phoenix. Not to mention, a draconic mount could be tamed from a young age. List used a super draconic beast as a new term, but Li William still believed in the term draconic. Even if he couldn't ride a dragon, riding a drake was still good. "Father, the blazing dragon bird is a fire element super dragon. It doesn't suit your combat energy attribute. Moreover, its existence is to help the fire dragon grow. You should know which is more important," List said. "Of course, helping the fire dragon grow is more important. But I still can't get over it. You shouldn't have let them appear in front of me. I'm starting to doubt whether I'll be able to tame the black albatross after seeing the drake and phoenix." It was like a 36D standing beside 32B. The Marquis lost all interest in 32B, and he couldn't even be bothered to say the words he had prepared. "Father, you should think about it differently. The blazing dragon bird takes a long time to grow. It might take decades for it to reach adulthood. On the other hand, the black albatross has immediate combat power. Its power in World of Warcraft isn't much weaker than a domain knight. That means you'll have the power of a domain knight if you ride it." As List spoke, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He had given the Marquis a mount because he felt superior. Why did it suddenly sound like a salesman? And the customer was looking down on it? So, he stealthily changed the topic. Of course, if you don't like super major monsters, then don't bother taming the black albatross. Just kill it and eat its meat. Maybe in the future, I'll come across a super dragon of the water element. You can tame it then. Hearing this, the ox-tailed Marquis, who had been looking longingly at the blazing dragon bird, immediately retracted his gaze and said seriously, "There's no need. This pitch-black albatross is fine." He had never read the story of picking up a sesame seed and throwing away a watermelon before, but the logic behind it was very clear. The mount that he had longed for half his life was about to be in his hands, so how could he bear to give it up? It was just that it was a bit of a pity. Originally, he had come in high spirits and was ready to ride the Super World Warcraft mount to show off. In the end, the 3 blazing dragon birds interfered, which made him feel slightly disappointed in World of Warcraft mounts. 3 draconic phoenixes. It felt terrible to be able to look but not eat. Lee William, the Marquis of Oxtail, took a deep breath and cleared his mind of distracting thoughts. He quickly displayed the decisive side of a veteran knight. When he looked at the pitch-black albatross again, there was no other color in his eyes, only a strong desire to conquer. "List, hold the line for me." "Don't worry, father." List had already awakened the fire dragon Leo and was ready to suppress the pitch-black albatross at any time. If he was not careful, the pitch-black albatross might kill William instead. Lee William stomped on the ground. Lee William somersaulted and accurately jumped behind the pitch-black albatross neck. He grabbed its feathers and wrapped them around its neck to stabilize his body. The pitch-black albatross instantly became irritated when it was ridden by someone. Gwa! It twisted its neck and swayed its body, trying to throw Lee William off. However, Lee William's water element combat chi was like a piece of sticky candy stuck to the albatross body. It kept invading the pitch-black albatross body, trying to establish a connection between his combat chi and the albatross magic energy. The best way to tame a mount was to mix the mount's magic energy with one's combat chi and infuse it with one's own aura. This way, the knight in World of Warcraft would be less resistant to it. However, the pitch-black albatross obviously did not like Lee William's roughness. Even though its feet were shackled by orichalcum, it still flapped its wings and rolled its body, trying to crush Lee William to death. However, at that moment, Leo, who was watching the show with his eyes wide open, suddenly let out a mighty dragon roar, and charged towards the pitch-black albatross with his dragon might. Boom. The pitch-black albatross body froze for a moment, and it did not dare to move anymore. It only let out a soft, aggrieved cry, "Gwa!" Leo slowly stood up and lowered his head. His nostrils flared as he stared at the pitch-black albatross with an evil gaze. Lee William took this opportunity to infuse his combat chi into the albatross body. One was water element magic energy, and the other was water element combat chi. The two were very similar. Thus, the combat chi smoothly blended into the pitch-black albatross magic energy and infused it with his own aura. Gwa! The pitch-black albatross cried out in pain. Lee William gently caressed its feathers, trying to calm his impetus so that the pitch-black albatross could feel his closeness. "Hey Teng, I'll call you Hey Teng." Teng was a common name used by the locals for seabirds, especially those with webbed feet. Teng. The pitch-black albatross shook its neck in frustration, still trying to throw Lee William off. However, the fire dragon stared at it and did not dare to move. It could only let Lee William display his closeness bit by bit, using his combat chi to mark the albatross body. When the sun rose and the land was bathed in bright sunlight, the pitch-black albatross finally surrendered. It lowered its head and allowed Lee William to do whatever he wanted to it. List, release the shackles on its legs. "I've tamed it," the oxtail Marquis said excitedly. "Father, are you sure?" "Yes." William Lee was confident in himself. "This super magical beast doesn't have a wild personality. I can feel that it has already submitted to me. In fact, it should be submitting to the cruel environment. After being glared at by an evil dragon, the World of Warcraft could not resist. The shackles were removed, and the albatross could move freely. Lee William tried to control the albatross to move. The super magical beasts looked majestic when they were flying on the sea, and they looked carefree when they were swimming. However, when they were walking on land, they were a little clumsy. They swayed, and there were a few times when they almost fell when they passed by a slope. This super magical beast didn't live up to its name. List, do you have any World of Warcraft meat in storage? Lend me some. After a while, Lee William borrowed a large batch of World of Warcraft meat from List and fed it to the albatross. Players with high intelligence in World of Warcraft knew how to judge the situation. Since they could not resist, they would try to accept it and enjoy it. When Llewellyn finished feeding the pitch-black albatross, he could clearly feel that the super magical beast had become much closer to him. The meal was over. The sky was bright. After List completed a round of night training, Lee William was still getting used to the albatross. The result was good. Lee William shouted, "Black Viper, run! Fly!" The albatross flapped its wings and started running. Its huge body rose into the air in a clumsy manner. He circled around Thorn Castle twice before heading to the seaside. It plunged into the sea and began to swim on the surface. After a while, Lee William rode the albatross back to Thorn Castle in high spirits. He landed on the ground with a whistling sound. The gigantic black viper was quite eye-catching. However, a few clucking and chirping sounds from the birds quickly crushed William's arrogance. No matter how flashy a super magical beast was, it couldn't compare to the 3 fire dragon birds that were known as the inferior dragons and phoenixes. And these 3 birds were raised by List as food for Leo. Comparisons were odious. Chapter 778. Although the atmosphere wasn't all that satisfying, the Oxtail Marquis finally had his own World of Warcraft mount, and it was a super World of Warcraft at that. In terms of results, it was a perfect ending. Thus, in the next few days, Lee William simply stayed in the Thorn Castle and cultivated his relationship with Dark Albatross Black Viper. Naturally, List couldn't accompany Lee William every day. He had a lot of things to take care of. Nami had already been brought by a Chi to the first Mangrove Island, and the smoke mission should be completed soon. The Crystal Cyathea was transported to the Crystal Workshop, where Brad and the rest continued to carve various crystal tools. Although glass tools could replace most crystal tools, magic equipment made from crystal was still an essential daily necessities for great nobles. As for the cultivation of the Crystal Cyathea, the mages of the Magic Guild were still patiently researching it, striving to cultivate a Crystal Cyathea that didn't need dragon magic to grow as soon as possible. The improvement of Magic Platform 2.0 was led by Crazy Truth. In the process of use, Magic Platform 2.0 still revealed its low accuracy, cumbersome communication process, and prone to malfunctions. Thus, the improvement of Magic Platform was destined to require a lot of effort, and it was difficult to overcome in a short period of time. In fact, List already had plans to let the other mages participate in the improvement of Magic Platform. However, the mages were still engrossed in the research of nature magic, and the druid transformation spell was restricted by the bloodline of the sun's child and couldn't be used. However, the other magic bean, magic wheat, magic melon, magic lotus, magic eggplant, magic pepper, magic ginseng, magic pear, magic sunflower, transfiguration tree, and magic orange had already been deciphered. List specially approved an experimental field for the Magic Guild to use for the cultivation of these magic plants. Although they grew slowly, they were constantly developing. Combined with the scientific farming techniques of the territory and the nature druid magic, a batch of magical fruits could be harvested in a few years or even a decade. What concerned List the most these days was the agitation of the triplets. Ever since the smoke mission to find the 3 islands was completed, the rubber worms had slowly entered a state of agitation. It wasn't as violent as when the worm stalk was conceived, but the triplets were agitated at the same time. Today, after using the power of the 3 faces to restore the rubber trees in the rubber garden, the restlessness had reached its peak. Immediately after, in the vision of List's magic eyes, the magic power of the rubber worm triplets began to change, slowly settling and expanding outwards, little by little expanding the triplets. Looking at it with the naked eye, the rubber worm triplets had entered the fat pupa stage. The speed at which they entered the fat pupa stage was far faster than that of a single sprite worm. In particular, the magic power of the 3 rubber worms shone with each other, like the oscillation when releasing the power of the 3 phases, constantly promoting the development of each other's fat pupa stage. The changes in the magic power were getting faster and faster, displaying the details of the previous evolution of the sprite worm during the fat pupa stage in List's eyes. So the agitation of the triplets means that they are going to evolve into elves. But the most amazing thing about the triplets is that they showed me the secret of evolution. List called a Chi over to participate in the evolution of the rubber worm triplets. Unfortunately, a Chi could only rely on the weave to sense the changes in the magic power and was unable to see the trajectory of the changes in the magic power. No matter how detailed List's description was, it was impossible to restore the nuances of the changes themselves. A Chi, according to my observation, the biggest change in the fat pupa stage of the sprite worm can actually be described as boiling water. The magic power is constantly boiling until it finally reaches the boiling point, which is the process of the sprite worm becoming a lesser sprite. But the continuous dissipation of magic power during this process will affect whether the water will eventually boil or not. The more List spoke, the more excited he became. In the evolution of ordinary sprite worms, the fat pupa stage will continuously lose magic power and energy. Once too much is lost, it will be very difficult to boil and the evolution will fail. However, because the rubber worm triplets accelerate each other, the process of boiling water will be shortened and the loss of energy and magic power will be very small, greatly increasing the probability of evolution. A Chi carefully sensed, trying to understand his words. During the dialogue, the rubber worm triplets, which had become bigger, fatter, and darker, slowly quietened down, lying motionlessly in the box. List knew that the changes in the magic power within their bodies were still going on and were only accumulating the final strength. This process may last for 3 to 5 days, which is far less consumption than the half a month or even a month of fat pupa stage of ordinary sprite worms. So what Big Brother means is, if this process can be artificially accelerated, the sprite worm's breakthrough will no longer fail. Failure is still possible, but artificially accelerating the fat pupa stage will certainly greatly increase the probability. I think this is a very good research direction. But a Chi still doesn't understand the process of boiling water, Big Brother. A Chi was somewhat depressed. List rubbed her blue hair. It doesn't matter if you don't understand, just slowly observe and understand the direction. Don't try to eat a fat person in one bite. Haven't you noticed? Ever since you became a high wizard, you have devoted too much energy to magic experiments, which is not good. A Chi asked, why? The A Chi I first met was an innocent and lovely siren who liked to sing, not a wizard who indulged in magic experiments. List recalled the scene of him playing the piano and a Chi singing in the worm room, and suddenly felt very emotional. Do you remember Ise? That conch singing demon. Yes, in fact, I think Ise is like a real siren, living in the sea, climbing onto the reef to sing when the moonlight rises, or listening to the shouts of sailors on passing ships. It is a kind of freedom that belongs to the sea, while you, a Chi, are locked in a cage of searching for the truth by magic. At this point, List himself became depressed. Although he was not a wizard, he was also locked in a cage of searching for the truth by magic research. In this life, there was too much happiness worth pursuing, rather than plunging headlong into the truth. The truth was too vast, too distant, too vast, and could not be explored in a lifetime. Without a happy state of mind, sooner or later, most wizards would fall into a twisted paranoia without knowing it. Achi, however, said, "Brother, but Achi does not feel unhappy now. I am very happy when I study magic. Idasa's life is like a sea monster, full of ignorance." Liszt, who was immersed in the atmosphere of no freedom that he created, felt a little embarrassed. Well, it was like a slacker complaining that studying made him feel that his life was bound, that losing freedom meant losing happiness, and that he was reduced to a walking corpse. Brainiac suddenly said, "Studying makes me super happy." If it were not for Achi, Liszt would have turned around and left without saying a word. Nobody could say such a thing to him casually. However, it was Achi who spoke, a little siren who was not yet an adult. She spoke in a serious tone. She really felt that studying magic was very happy. He paused. Chapter 779. Brother, do you really have to take time to play the piano and sing every day? Yes. But Achi feels that there is no time. I have a lot of research to do. The Magic Eye Magician plan needs to be implemented as soon as possible. Without Magic Eye, it will be very inconvenient for Achi to study magic. The nature of elemental incarnation also needs time to study, otherwise Achi's strength will be restricted. Occasionally changing your mind will help improve the efficiency of research. Needless to say, Achi, this is a daily task that must be completed. Liszt said unquestionably. Regardless of whether Achi was happier to study magic, he did not want the little siren to become a stereotypical magician. The next 2 days. Oxtail Marquis finally left on the tamed dark albatross, and Nami completed the smoke mission after a few days of farming in the mangrove forest of the island. Mission completed. Reward, a root variant of mangrove tree. Root variant, what does it mean? Liszt soon understood the meaning of this mutation. After Achi returned to Black Horse Island with Nami, Nami sowed mangrove seeds like a treasure. These mangrove seeds quickly turned into seedlings. The roots of the seedlings occupied 2/3 of the entire plant, and they quickly sank into the water and plunged into the sea mud. It turns out that root variant is to make the roots of the mangrove seedlings more developed and easier to land, so that the mangrove forest can quickly grow. Mangrove seedlings fell from the mother's body and required very harsh conditions to be fixed in the mud and not washed away by the sea. In some places where the tidal current was rapid, mangrove seedlings could not land at all, so they could not expand the mangrove forest. Now that there was a new species of mangrove, the mangrove forest was bound to expand rapidly. There were many benefits to the mangrove forest. Raising caterpillars, mallards, and flamingos were the main functions of the mangroves. They could also prevent wind and waves, promote siltation, protect beaches, strengthen banks, and purify seawater and air. In addition, the mangroves themselves could be used as fodder for livestock, and some species of mangroves had medicinal value. In the classification of herbs by Eris Truth, the medicinal value of several kinds of mangrove plants was recorded, as well as the value of seasoning. Since it is a root variant of mangrove tree, we will name it root mangrove. Liszt quickly named the new mangrove and rewarded Nami with many peanut nougat. Carrying a bag of peanut nougat, Nami was very happy. She took out a peanut nougat and handed it to Liszt to share. "Thank you." Liszt took the peanut nougat with a smile. Although he didn't like it, he still put it in his mouth for Nami's sake. Seeing that Liszt had eaten the peanut nougat, Nami handed another one to Achi. Achi didn't like it either, but she still ate the peanut nougat. Seeing that both of them had eaten, Nami was very happy. Chirp, chirp, chirp. She carried a rubber bag made of rubber blades and knocked on the door of each room. The elves had a good impression of Nami. Although they weren't very enthusiastic, they quickly accepted the gift of peanut nougat. Even the corn sprite, Mickey, who only liked to count corn kernels, took the peanut nougat, peeled off the wrapper, and counted how many peanuts were on it. 1, 2, 5, 3, 1, 7, 3, 2. It's a bit annoying. I'll count again. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 5. Passing by the door of the pea sprite, she shook her head at Nami and pulled out a piece of rope. Nami, the peanut nougat tastes terrible. Do you want to try the art of rope? Nami quickly waved her hand and flew away. Finally, she knocked on the door of the thorn sprite, Ella. Ella and Nami knew each other for the first time, but its attitude towards Nami was average. It didn't refuse the peanut nougat. I don't like peanut nougat. You have to give me corn powder next time. Chirp. Nami, you can't talk, stupid. Ella's nostrils went up. Nami smiled and didn't get angry. She peeled a peanut nougat, put it in her mouth, and took a bite. Chirp. Then she flew back to Achi's side, landed on her shoulder, and began to chirp. She gestured to Achi to take her to the underwater worm room. She was going to give Parker and the others peanut nougat. When List saw this, he touched the little sapling on her head and said, "If Nami evolves into a dragon sprite, she will definitely be a qualified elven housekeeper. Considerate, likable, and hard-working. Such an elf was hard to come by." After Nami treated everyone to candy, she continued to work. Just like Achi liked to study magic, she liked work very much, and work made her happy. List intended to stay in the castle and carefully observe the evolution of the rubber worm triplets, but the new task forced him to set off immediately. Task: the volcano of Dodo Island is about to go out. You and Leo have both felt the crisis brought about by the extinction of the volcano. Although things are irreversible, they can emit the last afterglow. Why not try to control Leo to control the volcano and complete a volcanic eruption? Reward: Dragon's Breath. This was a strange task. It turned out that Leo had to create a volcanic eruption. Although he didn't know the purpose of the smoke task, the reward was Dragon's Breath, which made List unable to refuse. The temperature of Leo's Dragon's Breath was not too high. It was about 1 or 2,000 degrees. It was mainly a way to vent magic, and it could not be used as a conventional attack. Before, List had been using the Dragon's Breath to train. This move was called Dragon's Breath Body Refinement, which constantly strengthened his body through the magic of the dragon. However, the effect of Dragon's Breath Body Refinement was not obvious now. The human body had huge limitations. When his skin was harder than steel, he could not continue to improve. Maybe after Leo's Dragon's Breath Body Refinement can be further improved, so that my body can break through the upper limit again and become stronger. Becoming stronger was always the main theme of personal struggle in this world, and it would never be out of date. Arriving at Dodo Island. List first saw Ainfant, the great elf, and asked Ainfant to put away the worm stalk. The volcano was about to usher in its last glory, and he would not come to Dodo Island to live in the future. Then he asked Achi to protect the sleeping light green gemstone dragon. He rode Leo to the crater of Dodo Island. There was only a lake left at the crater of the volcano that was still emitting smoke. The original magma lake had completely solidified. Leo landed on it and stomped on the solidified volcanic rocks with his feet. Unfortunately, there was no effect except for cracks. It could no longer turn into flames and merge into the magma. Roar! An unwilling roar made the four walls of the crater rustle and fall down. List cast Dragon Eye Orbit and carefully looked at the crater. There were traces of magic in his clear vision. Although the volcano had been extinguished, he could still capture the magic vein of this volcano. I can see the magic composition of the volcano, but how do I make it erupt? After a while, an inspiration bloomed. Chapter 780. Just do it. List immediately rode Leo and circled around the crater of the Dodo Island carefully. He checked the trajectory of the volcano's magic power, then found the nodes and guided Leo to release the fire dragon super demon to fuse with the volcano's magic power and start resonating. This was a huge project. List tried to guide the volcano's resonance a few times, but he failed every time. However, he slowly summarized the rules and realized that to really guide the volcano to erupt, he did not need to be very precise with the resonance. He only needed to let the fire dragon super demon operate and guide the volcano's magic power to form a tidal wave. When the peak of the wave exceeded a certain limit, the lava in the volcano that had not completely cooled down could start boiling again with the magic tide. However, doing this would consume a lot of Leo's fire dragon super demon. It was something that he had painstakingly accumulated, and it was related to his growth. Roar. He was a little reluctant. Don't be reluctant, Leo. Triggering the volcano to erupt will be very beneficial to your growth. As a fire dragon, if you can't even trigger the volcano to erupt, you'll be a failure as a dragon. Roar. Leo agreed to List's plan. He also wanted to grow, but as a young dragon, if he did not take shortcuts, he might need 100 years. Meeting List might have been a huge misfortune in terms of freedom, but in terms of growth, it was a huge blessing. With the help of the smoke mission, List could casually pull the threads of fate to help him grow in advance. Just like how he was guiding the volcano to erupt at that moment. The fire dragon super demon put in a lot of effort and quickly activated the volcano on the Dodo Island. The mountain started to rumble, and thick smoke rose. After a while, the first wave of lava flowed out of the volcano on the Dodo Island, which had already been extinguished. It quickly solidified when it came into contact with the air. Not enough. Put in more effort, Leo. Roar. Leo and List were telepathically connected. He immediately activated the fire dragon super demon that he had been accumulating for a long time and released it all at once. At that moment, the magic tide of the Dodo Island seemed to have exploded into a tsunami. It instantly caused a chain reaction, and the lava in the entire volcano was spewing crazily in the tsunami. Rumble. Rumble. Amidst the thick smoke, a huge pillar of fiery red magma gushed out, reaching a height of 100 meters into the sky. The berserk fire mana tore through the sky, tearing apart all the mana in the surroundings, leaving only the fire mana wantonly sweeping around. The falling lava flowed along the mountain, and there were flames and smoke everywhere. There was also a strong smell of sulfur. Roar. Looking at his masterpiece, Leo was excited. He threw himself at the magma pillar and bathed himself in it. List, on the other hand, suddenly took out a huge knight's shield from his space ring. He curled up in the Dragon Fong platform to avoid the scorching magma, bathing in it with Leo. After going in and out a few times, Leo's fire dragon super demon and the volcano super demon in the magma pillar naturally resonated with each other. And in this resonance, List clearly felt that the magic in Leo's body was undergoing a metamorphosis. It was no longer immature, and the boundary between high magic and supreme magic was no longer distinct. Instead, it was advancing layer by layer. Rumble. After the rapid eruption of the volcano, all the lava was used up, and it could no longer form a magma pillar. The magic tide also slowly collapsed, and the entire Dodo Island volcano quickly fell into silence. Only the lava that had yet to cool was still flowing down the mountain, emitting intense heat. Roar. Leo opened his mouth and instantly spat out a dragon's breath. There was no need to measure it carefully to know that the temperature of the dragon's breath had greatly increased. It was at least 2,000 to 3,000 degrees Celsius. It could melt steel in an instant. It was no longer a simple outlet for mana, but a powerful attack method. However, after spitting out the dragon's breath, Leo's expression was clearly dispirited. In the process of triggering the volcano's eruption, he had consumed too much of his fire dragon super demon. Go back, Leo. Riding the fire dragon slowly to the shore, List jumped down. Leo also turned into a ball of flames and merged with his body. Mission completed. Reward, Dragon's Breath Temperature. The smoke rose and changed into new serpentines. Mission: the caravan searched the major World of Warcraft barter markets in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and finally brought back a female flying dust dog pup. The evolution of the bloodline fruit can be carried out. Please feed the female flying dust dog pup the bloodline fruit. Reward: a clue to a new super dragon. Oh. I thought the reward of the mission would be a new blizzard beast to perfunctory me. List couldn't help but feel amused by his own thoughts. According to the rules of the previous smoke missions, the reward was a natural one. Feeding the flying dust dog a bloodline fruit should be rewarded with an evolved blizzard beast. This time, the reward was a clue to a new super dragon. Obviously, the clue to a super dragon is more valuable. In short, it's time to go back. This Dodo Island has been destroyed for the second time. List looked at the Dodo Island, which had been completely covered by volcanic magma. The forest of human skulls, as well as the scattered hemp rope vines, were all submerged. Only the area under a cheese protection had a few intact skull trees. The light emerald dragon has not yet woken up. It has been asleep for 3 or 4 months and still hasn't woken up, which makes List feel very troubled. The Heart Island has probably begun to evolve into a light emerald mine, but the creator light emerald dragon is still half dead. What did the mind fruit tree do to it in the first place, causing it so much damage? List walked over and touched the scales of the light emerald dragon, thinking slowly in his heart. If it wasn't for its steady breathing and stable spiritual world, List really would have wondered if it had become a plant dragon. The light emerald dragon eventually failed to wake up under List's gaze and could only continue to sleep on the destroyed Dodo Island. When he returned to the territory, the caravan had just sent over a female flying dust dog pup that had not yet grown up. The flying dust dog pup in the cage was fiercely baring its teeth, surrounded by Dosen and the 8 little ones, as well as Dosen's partner, Stupid Woman. They were all very interested in the flying dust dog pup. Woof woof. When List stood in front of the cage, the little flying dust dog barked incessantly. It could feel the terrifying threat emanating from List's every move. However, List didn't care about the flying dust dog pup's reaction. He just took out the bloodline fruit tree and buried it in the soil to let it continue to grow. Seeing the bloodline fruit, Dosen and the 8 little ones were suddenly envious, but without List's permission, they didn't dare to snatch the bloodline fruit tree. The chocobo Loki, who was eating grass in the distance, and the 3 fire drakes in Thorn Castle, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, also flew over and stared at the bloodline fruit. The flying dust dog pup in the cage was drooling. After waiting for half a day, the bloodline fruit finally ripened. At this time, List quickly plucked the bloodline fruit and fed it to the flying dust dog pup. Looking at the flying dust dog pup, his heart was full of expectations. Eat, eat, eat. Once you're full, quickly evolve. The flying dust dog army is counting on you. Right, let me give you a name first. Your evolution is like fermenting food, breeding new delicacies, so I'll just call you Yeast. Dosen, Blessed Curls, Stupid Woman, Yeast. Chapter 781. List had high hopes for the female flying dust dog cub, named Yeast, to bring an army of blizzard beasts to him. However, the result was disappointing. The yeast that ate the bloodline fruit did not have time to grow before it bled and died. The evolution of the bloodline fruit had failed. Looking at the dead flying dust dog, List shook his head and sighed. The bloodline fruit that is not a product of the smoke mission is the same as ordinary bloodline fruit, with a high probability of failure. I don't know if the smoke mission will also fail, and what the punishment is after failure. He ordered people to clean up the scene and sent the body of the flying dust dog to the Guild of Magic for the mages to dissect and study. Then he returned to Thorn Castle and summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, new Super Dragon Beast clue. Huh. List was surprised. He did not expect the flying dust dog to die suddenly, and the mission was still completed. It seems that the mission requirement is only to feed the flying dust dog, not whether the evolution is successful. Although I lost a bloodline fruit, the loss is still within the acceptable range. He was not ready to give up the plan of the Blizzard Beast Legion. After finding the bloodline fruit in the future, he would still try to evolve new Blizzard Beasts. The Blizzard Orders of Chivalry was destined to become an elite component of the Burning Orders of Chivalry. Putting away the disappointment of the sudden death of the flying dust dog, he continued to look at the smoke serpentines in front of him. In a flash, a new smoke mission was issued. Mission: High Mage Qi Roid's Truth is working hard to study the Qi secret technique, Magic Eye, and improve it into a mage version of the casting plan, but she needs your cooperation to obtain the most subtle Qi circulation route and method. Reward: Magic Eye, improved version of the super magic. Seeing the content, List could not help but be happy. A Qi is finally going to improve the mage version of Magic Eye. Not bad. With the mage version of Magic Eye, a Qi will be able to study magic more easily, and it will also better help me patrol the territory and find products. Elves, potions, World of Warcraft. With Magic Eyes, these products in the territory could not escape at all. List's energy alone was limited. Patrolling the land was already taxing, and it was difficult for him to take care of the sea. Even with the help of the rainbow whale, Lolth, he rarely searched for resources in the sea. When a Qi learned the Magic Eyes, the resources of the sea could be completely handed over to her to collect. As his thoughts flickered, he even thought of the name of the improved spell a Qi was about to complete. It would be called Eye of Magic. It just so happened that a Qi was conducting an experiment in Thornfort's laboratory, so List headed straight to the laboratory to have an in-depth conversation with a Qi. Transforming a secret technique of Qi into magic was not something that could be done overnight. Days passed in mid-February. After a few days of gestation, the rubber worm triplets finally lived up to List's high expectations. They successfully completed their magic power boil and struggled out of the sprite worm's dead skin. All of a sudden, 3 white and chubby elves flew out and circled the laboratory in a line. Then, they cried out in unison, "Bo, bo, bo. Bo, bo, bo. Bo, bo, bo." List dispersed the Magic Eyes and waved his hand. The 3 rubber sprites immediately landed on his arm. They looked almost the same, but they were very easy to distinguish. On one of its heads was a rubber tree sapling with a thick trunk. On another head was a rubber tree with a round fruit. On another head was a rubber tree with 2 large leaves. They represented the different varieties of their cordyceps: spring rubber, fruit rubber, and fan rubber. I don't usually give names to sprites, but the arrival of the 3 of you will provide a wealth of data for the evolution of the sprites. Perhaps I will soon be able to develop a method to accelerate the evolution. Therefore, I made an exception and gave you names. You are called Big White, you are called Little White, and you are called Little White. The spring rubber sprite was called Big White because its cordyceps were the first ordinary rubber, which later evolved into spring rubber. The fruit rubber sprite was the second to give birth to its cordyceps, so it was called Little White. The fan rubber sprite was the last to give birth to its cordyceps, so it was called Little White. Bo, bo, bo. Bo, bo, bo. Bo, bo, bo. The 3 rubber sprites were very happy, and they liked their new names. List could feel that they still had the same thoughts, and their movements were the same. However, they had their own thoughts, and they were no longer as in sync as when they were rubber worms. However, they could still use the power of the 3 phases. Moreover, the power of the 3 phases had been greatly enhanced, and they could fully expand within the range of the cordyceps. The range of Big White's cordyceps was about 1,200 acres, Little White's was about 900 acres, and Little White's was about 1,100 acres. Altogether, they could use the power of the 3 phases in an area of 3,200 acres. Moreover, the consumption of the power of the 3 phases was much lower, and they could use it once every 3 days. In that case, from now on, you will follow the castle servants to use the power of the 3 phases every 3 days to help me plant the rubber trees, okay? Bo bo bo. Bo 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 bo. Bo 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 bo. The 3 rubber sprites agreed in unison, and they were very obedient to List's orders. They were calm and did not have any restlessness. This made List heave a long sigh of relief. Finally, the sprites that he had raised had normal personalities. Otherwise, he would really suspect that there was something wrong with him, and that was why he had raised these problematic sprites. With the rubber sprite triplets, the expansion of the rubber plantation was a matter of course. In the future, the rubber output was bound to skyrocket, and it would be enough to support the current construction needs of the territory. After the rubber sprite triplets successfully evolved, the territory welcomed a fleet from Blue Dragon Island, and the fleet sent 2 special teams. One team was the Iron Knight family, who had originally followed the Sapphire Grand Duke. As the trading partner of the Sapphire family in helping the Flame family build the country, they sent the Flame territory to pledge their loyalty to List. The other team was from the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The leader of the Iron and Steel Ridge emissary group, Kent Magic Elephant, and his sister, Kenly Truth, had come on a pilgrimage with a group of magicians. The Iron Knight family came to pay their respects first. Your Highness the Dragon Knight, Nicole Bellows sends his most sincere greetings. The first one was an elder in his 50s. He knelt on one knee and saluted. The Bellows family is willing to follow your Highness and assist you wholeheartedly in forging knight equipment for your Highness. Count Nicole, I, List Flame, accept your allegiance in the name of the Dragon Knight. List pointed his sword, the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword, at Count Nicole's shoulder, indicating that he had accepted the other as his follower. The Bellows family lived on the inheritance of the Iron Knight. Although they had the title of Count, they rarely went to the battlefield and only stayed on Blue Dragon Island to forge various weapons and equipment for the Sapphire family's knight use. Strictly speaking, the Bellows family also belonged to the Blue Blood Alliance because Nicole was the Count of Iron Anvil City. However, he only held the title of Count of Iron Anvil City. When the Sapphire Grand Duke gifted this family to List, the territory of Iron Anvil City had already been taken back. List was well aware of the importance of the Iron Knight. After pondering for a moment, he said, for the time being, you will maintain your status as the Count of Iron Anvil City. I will provide all resources and support. I will provide you with a new fief on the day I build the country. Everything is decided by your Highness. Nicole said like a hoodlum. Although he was a count, his fate was still not up to him. Chapter 782. With the arrival of the Bellows family, there was no task for them for the time being, so List decided to take care of them for a few years and wait for the archipelago to be established before making further plans. Then, he arranged for the Bellows family to work at the Knight Academy, and together with Alvin Eaglesword, they would be in charge of the Iron Knight Academy's Iron Knight Academy. There was a huge demand for Iron Knights in the future, and no matter how many Iron Knight they trained, they would not have to worry about not having enough to eat. Therefore, the Iron Knights of the Bellows family were willing to teach. Then, List accepted an audience with Kenly Truth. Kenly was 36 years old, unmarried, and became a great mage at the age of 22. As a member of the Magic Elephant family, she had some prestige in the magic circle of the Eagle Kingdom, and had once studied with the court's great mage. However, she did not stay in the court, but returned to her family's fief to continue studying magic. Later, she organized a group of mages called the Elephant Gathering. When she heard that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had given birth to an incarnation of truth that walked the world, she could not help but want to make a pilgrimage. After her brother brought back a positive answer, she brought the mages from the Elephant Gathering who were willing to make a pilgrimage. When List saw these mages, he did not say much and directly left it to Crazy Truth to make arrangements. As the vice president of the Guild of Magic, Crazy was in charge of the daily affairs of the guild, and the rules of the guild were strictly implemented according to List's requirements. You will have to fight for the right to study with the great magic shooter. Only by joining the Guild of Magic and abiding by the rules of the guild and the laws of the territory can you continue to study magic in the territory. If you are not willing, please leave. If you are willing, immediately disband the elephant gathering and submit your application. Kenley immediately said, the elephant gathering is only an exchange between mages. Coming to the flame territory, the elephant gathering no longer exists. I only represent myself and officially apply to join the Guild of Magic. The other mages also expressed their intention to apply to join. List did not ask about the next arrangements. During this period of time, several great mages had come on a pilgrimage, and Crazy had arranged everything well. Of course, there might be part-time rats from other countries, but List wasn't worried. The blood servants were closely monitoring the movements of the fire territory. These vampires were List's eyes in the dark. Once they discovered any mages engaging in espionage, they would immediately be killed. No one dared to blame List for the disappearance of a few mages in the fire territory. With the arrival of the Bellows family's Iron Knight and the Elephant Conglomerate's mage, the reward of the previous quest, clue to a new super dragon beast, was immediately obtained. List specifically sent someone to ask these two groups of people. The Iron Knight family did not know any clues about the super dragon. They all heard about the Sky Dragon as a legend. However, among the mages of the Elephant Gathering, Kenley Truth had done a lot of research on drakes and knew a lot about them. During their conversation, Chris compiled the information into a book and reported it to List. The sky dragons that Kenley knew included Phoenix, White Bull, Unicorn, Night the Arch, Eagle, and Golden Goat. Kenley had even seen the Golden Goat with her own eyes. The Golden Goat is a huge goat covered in golden wool. It has a pair of horns on its head that look like a dragon. Its wool is very precious. Knights with Earth attribute Chi can obtain a powerful buff if they wear the Golden Goat. It's like the effect of the Phoenix's feathers on a fire attribute knight. Without a doubt, the Golden Goat was a super dragon beast of the Earth attribute. The Iron and Steel Ridge royal family reared a group of golden goats. The golden wool shed by the golden goats was an excellent reward given by the king to the knight. Other than that, the royal family had once hunted the phoenix and obtained a lot of its feathers. A certain duke's family that had produced a dragon knight reared a sky dragon called the eagle. It was a creature that looked like a combination of a horse and an eagle. It was said that it could travel thousands of miles in a day. The Night the Arch was a sky dragon that could only be seen by the dead. The nature of the White Bull was unknown, but the throne of the king of the Iron and Steel Ridge, Osborne, was covered with the White Bull's hide. Among them, there was also the Unicorn. This was a creature with a very high level of legend, but there were detailed records. The Duchy of Rose, a vassal state of the Iron and Steel Ridge, once wanted to marry a princess, the daughter of the duke, to the mentally retarded son of the king 2 generations ago. As a result, the princess escaped the siege of the Orders of Chivalry by riding a unicorn and wandered into the forest. This was confirmed by the monarchs of the 2 states. These 6 kinds of sky dragons all existed. Of course, there were many legendary sky dragons that had not been confirmed. For example, the Cerberus that suppressed the land of exile, the Hydra that was a sea monster in the Devil's Sea, the Chimera that was a mixture of sheep, lion, and snake heads, the giant wolf Fenrir of the land of ice and snow, the giant python that was connected head to tail, and the giant lion Nimia that could not be killed. There was also the legendary guardian of the Golden Apple, the Laden Dragon, which was a kind of earth dragon that could not fly. In addition, there were also some legends that recorded 3 kinds of sky dragons that were as powerful as dragons. They were the sea giant Leviathan, the land giant Behemoth, and the sky giant Perch. Of course, although most of the legends had a real origin, for example, the origin of the phoenix was a flame dragon bird. Although it was a sky dragon, it was not as magical as the phoenix in the legends. However, legends like Behemoth, Leviathan, and Perch were probably nonsense. Dragons represented the pinnacle of power. In the Pegasus Forest on the east coast of the kingdom, there are sporadically distributed high-level dragon Pegasus. This kind of white Pegasus is very handsome, attracting a large number of knight to the Pegasus Forest in search of it. A knight revealed that they saw a Pegasus with a single horn in the Pegasus Forest. It was extraordinary, and should be a unicorn. This was the clue about the super dragon beast that Kenley revealed. Unfortunately, the Pegasus is powerful and fast, making it difficult to capture. The unicorn disappeared into the forest with a glance. There were many night witnesses, and because of this, King Osborne personally sent a knight to capture it. Unfortunately, they did not find the unicorn. Pegasus Forest. List recorded the name of the place and prepared to send a serpentine blood servant to the Pegasus Forest to investigate. After confirming the route on the map, he would take the time to find the unicorn himself. Whether it was in folklore or in night novels, the unicorn was synonymous with holiness. Many people swore that only pure, beautiful, innocent, and kind female virgins could be accepted by the unicorn. However, from the restoration of the legend of the Phoenix, List roughly understood that all sky dragons were exaggerated. These super dragon beasts were actually just some of the more magical World of Warcraft. The unicorn should not be an exception. From its appearance in the Pegasus Forest, it could be deduced that this might be a Pegasus with the bloodline of the dragon. Its specialty was that it was extremely fast. Therefore, to capture the unicorn, one must set up a trap, otherwise it would be difficult to catch up. However, according to Kenley's description, a princess of the Rose Duchy actually rode a unicorn and escaped from the encirclement of the Orders of Chivalry. How did this princess tame the unicorn? Could it be that the unicorn is really as described, sensitive to female virgins? Chapter 783. The arrival of Kenley Truth brought many new magical ideas and a large number of magic books to the Guild of Magic. In particular, she had learned from the court archmage and understood the mainstream development of the magic world in the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. This was something that the mages in the remote island countries could not access. But there were magic shooters here. List had the intention to make a Chi a legend. He did not arrange for a Chi to have too much contact with ordinary mages, and he did not reveal the advancement method of magic shooters to the public. In fact, it did not matter even if he did. With the shrinking magic net, it was difficult for the archmages to access the magic net. Even a genius like a Chi could barely access the magic net with the help of the mermaid's tears. How could those ordinary people know that the magic net was out of reach? He hoped to use a Chi's influence to guide the mages to serve the territory, and when the mages made contributions, he would arrange for a Chi to guide them. Only mages who were completely loyal to the Guild of Magic and had the ability to follow a Chi could be qualified to follow a Chi. Currently, only Chris was qualified to follow List. As for Lucy and the twins, they were magic seeds that List had nurtured. After reading the knowledge brought by Kenley and the others, and combining it with the knowledge from Earth provided by List, a Chi quickly came up with the third super magic, Centrifugal Water Molecular Shield. This magic used a special magic array to make the magic particles move at a uniform speed, thus stripping the water element magic from the chaos magic, and then producing a stable magic shield. The circular magic shield had a strong defense, and could almost block a casual attack from the Dragon Knight. Without a doubt, once this super magic could be released instantaneously, a Chi would play a huge role in supporting List in battle. Not only could she help List block attacks, but more importantly, she could protect her own safety. If a qualified support could not even protect himself, how could he protect the frontline output? Seeing that a Chi had come up with 3 super magic spells, List still could not come up with the 4th move of the Fire Dragon Knight's Secret Manual. However, after experiencing the volcano eruption, List had also improved. He could already borrow Leo's Firebird and activate it himself to achieve the effect of intimidating the enemy. The element of surprise was a good way to attack, especially against World of Warcraft. Back then, when the Grand Duke was fishing and acting cool, his whole body emitted dragon's might, which made him envious. Now, he could finally emit dragon's might. He was in a good mood. However, at this moment, Lucy and Ruth, who were starting to master the magic platform, sent him a piece of shocking news. The message was from the exploration fleet. Nautical chart, XX position, encountered a terrifying sea monster, shaped like a giant turtle. At first, I thought it was a small reef, but I realized it was a sea monster when I got closer. Because opportunity was too close, the sea turtle suddenly stood up like a small island and pushed opportunity out of the sea. Currently, the sea monster is slowly swimming towards the southeast direction. Sir Lord, please provide assistance. A sea monster that's as big as an island? List immediately thought of the tortoiseshell that Emily was wearing. Perhaps this tortoiseshell was a type of super draconic beast. Or maybe the super draconic beast clue provided by the smoke mission isn't the unicorn that Kenley mentioned, but this tortoiseshell that the expedition team sent? Regardless of whether it was true or not, rescue must be carried out. List was not good at fighting sea monsters, so he could only let Achi do it. With Achi's identity as a water magic shooter, she would even dare to fight a water dragon, not to mention a super dragon. According to the nautical chart, the exploration fleet was now searching for islands in the sea south of the 3 islands. It was pure luck that they found the 3 islands in the vast sea. Therefore, when they searched further south, it was not so easy to find the islands. For more than 10 days, they did not even see the shadow of an island. Therefore, when they saw the sea monster, they thought it was a reef. If there was a reef, it was very likely that there was an island nearby. When they hurried over, the sea monster was startled and moved, forcing opportunity to run aground. It's more than 1,300 kilometers away from Black Horse Island. With Achi's speed, it will take about 2.5 hours. I hope the sea monster will not be restless during this time and destroy my opportunity. List said silently. The Grand Duke only gave him 6 palace fast sailboats. Now the dock has not yet fully grasped the manufacturing technology of the 3-masted sailboat. Every palace fast sailboat destroyed was a huge loss. The flame quickly carried a large number of supplies prepared for the exploration fleet. An hour later, under the control of Achi, it immediately sailed towards the area where the accident occurred. 2.5 hours later, they arrived accurately, but there was no sign of the exploration fleet. List called Leo and rode the dragon into the sky to slowly search. Coupled with constant communication with the exploration fleet's magic platform, they finally locked on to the fleet's tracks. Thank you, Your Highness, for coming to the rescue. Yevich Water Peanut's face had already turned purple from the sea breeze. After exchanging pleasantries, he said, the sea monster is swimming about a kilometer ahead. It's not moving very fast, but we don't dare to approach it for fear of angering it again and causing unnecessary losses. At this time, the harpoon-shaped staff that went to sea with the ship trembled, and Virginia Truth, who had transformed into a necromancer, appeared. Your Royal Highness, I tried to get close to the sea monster, but the sea monster is very sensitive to me. I can feel its disgust for my undead identity. I understand. Get ready to rescue opportunity. Leave this sea monster to me. After List asked, he handed the flame to Yevich to take over and carry supplies. He rode the little fire dragon Leo and flew into the sky to help Achi. There was no doubt that the main force of this battle was Achi alone. Be careful. Brother, don't worry. Achi will protect herself. After saying that, the sea monster quickly swam forward. List, who had retracted his firebird, used his dragon eyes to scan the area in front of him. The mana retroaction of the sea turtle was purplish-white. There was no doubt that this was a sea monster of the thunder element. Moreover, the intensity of the mana retroaction made it worthy of being called a super dragon. Most importantly, the mana concentration on the turtle's shell was the highest, which made it impossible for List not to associate it with the palm-sized turtle shell that he had obtained from the dragon knight Carl Lowe. The diameter of the turtle shell is almost 100 meters, which means that this flood dragon is probably one size larger than an adult fire dragon. Fortunately, no matter how dense its mana is, it can't be compared to the mana of a dragon. Otherwise, I would really doubt whether dragons are the creatures that stand at the peak of strength. While he was observing, Achi had already approached the flood dragon turtle. However, she did not attack immediately. It seemed that she was confronting the flood dragon turtle. At this time, the flood dragon turtle also noticed Achi. It stopped swimming and slowly turned around. Sure enough, there was a fast sailboat stranded on its turtle shell. Chapter 784. The confrontation between Achi and the draconic turtle lasted for a few minutes. This left List scratching his head. He had always been a hot-tempered person in battle. After a few words, he would be done with it. Since strength was king in this world, then displaying strength was the best way to communicate. After showing their strength, everyone knew what to say. However, after half an hour, Achi still hadn't moved. At this time, the draconic turtle moved. It slowly sank into the water, and Opportunity, which was stranded on its shell, returned to the sea. The next moment, a stream of water carried Opportunity away. So, that's the problem? List looked at the calm sea, feeling a little uncomfortable. In fact, compared to saving Opportunity, he wanted to kill the draconic turtle. After all, it was a super dragon, and the changes in its shell would be of great help to his training. Back then, when the blazing dragon bird's tail feathers revealed the changes between the soul and magic, he didn't have time to show more details, which made him feel regretful. As if to dispel List's thoughts. When Opportunity was out of danger, the draconic turtle floated to the surface again, and on top of its shell stood Achi, wearing a magic cloak. Achi waved at List, signaling List to come down. Out of trust in Achi, and out of confidence in his own strength, List jumped down from the sky and landed on the shell of the draconic turtle. The shell was close to 100 meters in diameter, and there were many coral reefs on it. It looked very strange. It was hard to imagine how this draconic turtle lived. If it was a shell that didn't like to move, it wasn't impossible for its shell to be covered with coral, but a turtle with coral meant that it probably didn't move at all. Brother. What's wrong with this turtle? The giant turtle is not a threat. Achi can feel that it is very peaceful, so after talking with it for a while, it agreed to go home with Achi. Achi's face was full of smiles. She was very satisfied that she had subdued a super dragon turtle. Brother, don't kill it, okay? It can really understand you. Well, when Achi used to live in the sea, she saw a lot of sea turtles and knew that they rely on the vibration of the water to communicate. So just now, Achi tried different water vibrations to make this big turtle understand the meaning, but its thinking seems a bit clumsy. There's such a thing? List believed her. After all, Achi was a spirit of the sea, so it should not be difficult for her to control the sea creatures. So what do you want to do with it? Make it protect your territory, or use it as a transport ship, or use it for research? Does it really obey orders? Brother, although the turtle is stupid, it has lived for a long time. It's said that it knows a lot of islands. Island? List suddenly laughed. Not bad, not bad. If it can lead us to the island, then its contribution will be great. When my country is established, maybe I can raise it as a guardian beast. Compared to the value of the island, a turtle shell became less important. After all, he still had Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple to study at any time. The big turtle will definitely be able to find the island. It said that it used to return to the island every year to breed. How many baby turtles did it breed? Achi said, "The big turtle said that there are many big turtles like it on the island it was born on. It doesn't know how many there are, but there are a lot of them, but they are not as big as it. Since it grew too big, it rarely returned to the island it was born on and has been drifting on the sea. Then let's go to the island it was born on first." List immediately decided. After signaling the expedition fleet to protect the flame and rest in place to repair the damage to the Opportunity, List and Achi immediately drove the flood dragon turtle to the island it was born on. This big turtle is a thunder attribute flood dragon. Currently, there is no information on what it should be called in the legends, so according to our naming convention, we will call it Thunder Dragon Turtle. Before setting off, List casually gave it a name. It doesn't seem fast. The swimming speed of the Thunder Dragon Turtle was about 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. It was definitely faster than the speed of a sailboat, but after getting used to the speed and excitement of Achi, List couldn't stand this kind of speed. "Brother, don't worry." Achi raised her hand as if she was controlling the water flow to communicate with the Thunder Dragon Turtle. After a while, she said, "The Thunder Dragon Turtle is sensing the direction. When it has chosen the direction of the island, Achi will control the water flow to help it speed up." 10 minutes later, the Thunder Dragon Turtle finally determined the direction. It was heading east and south. According to this direction, it seemed to be sailing in the direction of the Devil's Sea, which was outside the Aquamarine Sea. According to the nautical records of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Sapphire Islands were surrounded by the Aquamarine Sea, and outside the Aquamarine Sea was the Devil's Sea. There was no detailed division of other sea areas. The current position of the expedition fleet, strictly speaking, had already left the Aquamarine Sea where the Sapphire Islands were active. They were sailing in a new sea area. But in any case, the new sea area belonged to the coastal waters of the legendary continent. List hoped to build a country in the coastal waters. The further east they sailed, the further away from the legendary continent. The unknown ocean was collectively known as the Devil's Sea. Achi controlled the water flow and let the Thunder Dragon Turtle move forward along the water she controlled. The speed suddenly increased to about 200 kilometers per hour. This swim lasted for 5 consecutive hours. After swimming more than 1,000 kilometers, a crescent moon rose. Finally, the Thunder Dragon Turtle became excited. It sensed the aura of its birthplace island, or rather, it had a natural sense of intimacy with the sea around the birthplace island. After swimming for half an hour, List and Achi successfully saw the outline of an island in the moonlight. This island was not big. It might be much smaller than Black Horse Island. But in the vision of List's magic eye, there was a little purple and white light flashing. Those should be the same kind of Thunder Dragon Turtle. "I'm rich." Such a thought flashed quickly in his mind, but soon he was puzzled as he got closer. Because the Thunder Dragon Turtles in his field of vision were far less bright than the one under his feet. The most important thing was that their turtle shells did not have a special brightness. They were also much smaller than the Thunder Dragon Turtles. The largest one was only about 20 meters in diameter. Is it an underage Thunder Dragon Turtle? He suddenly remembered the information that Kenley Truth had brought him about the unicorn. It was said that the unicorn lived in a herd of Pegasi. Obviously, the Pegasi and the unicorn were fundamentally different, and it was difficult to be regarded as the same species. Perhaps this Thunder Dragon Turtle was also fundamentally different from the turtle on the island. He just didn't know if this difference was innate or caused by growth. Flame Dragon Bird and Young Bird, Unicorn and Pegasi, Thunder Dragon Turtle and Ordinary Thunder Dragon Turtle. The information of these super dragons flashed quickly in his mind, trying to find patterns and clues. At this time, Chapter 785. Under the Night Sky. List took out 2 magic torches. As the name suggested, magic torches were flashlights that emitted magical light. Twisting open the cover of the torches, the light converged into one in the crystal lampshade. The brightness was very high, comparable to the headlights of a car. Without a doubt, this was a new product developed by the Guild of Magic. He and Achi each held a magic torch. Coming ashore with the lightning dragon turtle, it seemed that the aura of the lightning dragon turtle had spread out, causing the surrounding dragon turtles of all sizes to become restless. In the vision of the magic eyes, purplish-white rays of light could be seen rising and falling. It was the dragon turtles preparing to release magic. However, following the lightning dragon turtles' galloping cry, these dragon turtles immediately stopped and slowly approached the lightning dragon turtle. After the lightning dragon turtle galloped a few times, all the dragon turtles returned to their positions and continued to rest. List held the magic torches, jumped down from the back of the lightning dragon turtle, and inspected the quiet dragon turtles. He found that they were 80% similar in appearance to the lightning dragon turtle, but their shells were somewhat different. The shell of the lightning dragon turtle had 3 protruding edges, while the shells of the other dragon turtles were very smooth. He wanted to kill a few dragon turtles to study their internal structure, but the lightning dragon turtle was at the side, so he was too embarrassed to kill them. Who knew if they were considered its descendants? Actually, they shouldn't be. After a moment of observation, List concluded, the bloodline of these dragon turtles is fundamentally different from that of the lightning dragon turtle. The hatchlings of the Inferno dragon bird are born with high magic power, and the 7 feathers at the back of their tails are special. The dragon turtles are only low magic power, and there is no change in the nature of their shells. He was actually quite disappointed to come to such a conclusion. He thought he could get a large group of lightning dragon turtles, but it was only a large group of World of Warcraft. Achi, record this group of dragon turtles. Judging from their size, the largest is close to 20 meters in diameter, and should be classified as Advanced World of Warcraft. It is not at the level of Super Warcraft, not to mention Super Dragon Beasts. Okay, brother. After observing the situation of the dragon turtles, List was ready to inspect the island. He had already named the island Dragon Turtle Island. However, when he shone the wand back and forth, he soon discovered that this was a deserted island. There weren't even any trees on this deserted island, only rocks and sand. No trees meant no elves, magic potions, and other products, which meant that they were worthless. Therefore, after patrolling for a while, he did not continue patrolling and returned to the Thunder Dragon Turtle's position. Achi was sitting on the turtle's shell, writing and drawing. A crystal lamp illuminated the small table in front of her. A white notebook and a quill pen were constantly rubbing together serpentines and drawings. She was mapping a nautical chart. In fact, books about astrology were mostly based on nautical charts. The fleet of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had begun to use the stars to determine the nautical position. After List taught Achi astronomical knowledge, she combined the knowledge of the predecessors with List's knowledge to create a new astrology. At present, the new astrology only had the function of calculating the position. Brother, according to Achi's measurements and calculations of the constellations, Dragon Turtle Island is about 1,850 kilometers away from Black Horse Island. She waved her hand casually. A telescope condensed from water appeared in front of her eyes. She aimed it at the sky and then the telescope dissipated. The quill pen in her hand drew a clear picture. Brother, look, this is the longitude and latitude of the Azure Sea that Achi drew according to your teachings. The longitude and latitude were too difficult to measure and could not be drawn for the time being. She could only establish a coordinate system for initial application. In the coordinate system shown by the grid lines, small dots were distributed, which represented the islands that had been discovered. Black Horse Island was at the northernmost end of the grid, the 3 islands were in the middle of the grid, and Dragon Turtle Island was in the southeast position of the grid. The 3 points were connected to form an obtuse triangle. Well, it's a good drawing, very vivid. List praised. Achi said, Brother, Achi is going to dive into the sea now. Check the underwater part of Dragon Turtle Island to see if it is still within the continental shelf or close to the continental slope. According to Brothers' continental slope to divide the offshore Azure Sea and the deep Devil Sea, it is likely that Dragon Turtle Island is located at the intersection of the Azure Sea and the Devil Sea. Let's go tomorrow. It's night now. Take a good rest first. Don't tire yourself out. Brother, rest first. Achi is not sleepy at all. If you are not sleepy, do something else. Don't go into the sea at night. List said. Although for Achi, she was the overlord of the sea at night and sea monsters posed no threat to her. But List felt that the sea at night was dangerous and that she should not run around. Achi did not insist. She chatted with List for a while and then continued to look up at the starry sky at a 45-degree angle, exploring the secrets of the universe. The next day, Achi dived into the sea early in the morning and continued what she failed to do last night. That was to investigate the geographical location of Dragon Turtle Island. List continued to patrol the island. During the day, he had a wide field of vision and could see the entire island at a glance. This was indeed a deserted island with no signs of life. Only a group of dragon turtles lived here. As the sun gradually rose, the dragon turtles also went into the sea, and soon there was only one thunder dragon turtle left on the island. The thunder dragon turtle curled up in its shell and slept soundly. Ever since it landed on the island last night and let out a few cries, it had not moved even once. Perhaps for such a huge thunder dragon turtle, stillness was the majority of the turtle's life. In the afternoon, List was having lunch. Achi returned with the information she had gathered. To the west of Dragon Turtle Island is the continental shelf, and to the east is the continental slope. This is indeed the boundary between the offshore and the deep sea. Further east is the Devil's Sea. Legend had it that the Devil's Sea was temperamental and storms could happen at any time. As if to complement Achi's investigation, not long after she finished speaking, a storm swept through the dark clouds in the distance and attacked Dragon Turtle Island. Violent winds, heavy rain, thunder, and lightning flashed. The entire island trembled in the extreme weather. The thunder dragon turtle was not afraid. On the contrary, it woke up from its sleep. Purplish-white lightning attribute magic light continuously rose from its shell, attracting the lightning in the sky and using the power of the lightning to strengthen its aura. Achi, I suddenly feel that the so-called super dragons aren't infected by dragons at all. Instead, they're infected by the supreme demons that are brewing in nature. Can you feel it? Every time a bolt of lightning is born, there's a large amount of thunder element supreme demons brewing, and they're all captured by the lightning dragon turtle. Achi can only vaguely feel it. The lightning attribute supreme magic cannot be stored in its body, but in the process of decomposition, a large amount of lightning attribute supreme magic will become nourishment for its growth. This may be the reason why it grew from an ordinary dragon turtle to a thunder dragon turtle. It is the acquired reason that created its bloodline. List discovered the nature of the super dragon beast. It has mutated. Looking at the thunder dragon turtle bathed in lightning, his eyes gradually flashed with the luster of wisdom. In an instant, many inspirations surged. Chapter 786. Let the storm come more violently. Man and dragon merged into one. The dragon knight resonated. List held the 5-meter-long dragon spear, Fury of Thunder, in his hand. His lofty aspirations soared to the sky. Dragon warrior energy gushed out from his body, evaporating the soybean-sized raindrops before they could even get close. Wherever the dragon knight passed, even the fiercest storm would turn into smoke and leave behind a trail of mist. It created a third color between heaven and earth. This was a path of tearing water and fire apart. Leo was a fire dragon. He did not like stormy weather. He did not even like the environment of the sea. However, his predecessor had died on the sea. After he was reborn, he was born in the sea. He left his suitable habitat and was forced to accept the harsh test of the environment. This made him angry. Roar! List was one with him. He understood that his thoughts were also controlling his thoughts. Anger is the most useless emotion. Leo, you have to learn to overcome anger. Fate made you die in the sea that you feared the most in your previous life. Then, in this life, you should learn to overcome the sea from a young age. Roar! Yes, controlling the storm is only the first step for us to conquer the sea. When we conquer the sea, nothing in the legendary continent can stop our footsteps and wings. Roar! At this moment, the human and dragon no longer had any fear or disgust for the storm. They only had the fighting spirit to tear through the storm, thunder, and lightning. Suddenly, Leo turned his body and dove down in a spiral shape. List held the fury of thunder tightly and shook the dragon spear in his hand along with Leo's rotation. The dragon warrior energy gushed out and was released rhythmically. Circle after circle of flame spread out, constantly tearing apart the scene of the storm. Even the Thunder Supreme Demon, which was struck by lightning, was smashed into pieces when it collided with the Dragon Knight's attack. When List and Leo dove from 1,000 meters above Dragon Turtle Island to the other side of the island, the dark clouds covered the sun. Even the dark sky was lit up by the trajectory of the attack. Countless flames hung in the sky, steaming the wind and rain. Boiling the sea. This is the fourth move of my Dragon's Do Chi secret manual. It is also the most powerful move at the moment. In the end, List directed the Dragon Knight's attack to the rocks by the sea, directly blasting a huge crater. The high temperature melted the surrounding rocks, forming many sparkling glasses. Most of the stones in this area were quartz. After a long while, the flames in the sky slowly extinguished, and the crater on the ground was filled with seawater. The storm once again wiped out the Dragon Knight's attack. List rode on Leo and slowly floated by the seaside. He looked at the intimidating weather and thought quietly, if this move is driven by the Fire Dragon Supreme Demon, will it be carved eternally in the sky above Dragon Turtle Island? This was just a thought. At the current stage, Leo was not so extravagant that he could use his Fire Dragon Super Demon as a regular attack method. He had already used up a lot of his Fire Dragon Super Demon by guiding the volcano on Dodo Island to erupt. It flapped its wings. Returning to the Lightning Dragon Turtle's position, this sea monster bathed in lightning was very afraid of Leo. Fortunately, List had restrained Leo's draconic aura. Chi was also constantly comforting the Lightning Dragon Turtle, which was why it did not escape into the sea. Even a super dragon beast could only tremble in front of a dragon. Even if the Lightning Dragon Turtle was 100 meters long, Leo was just a little bird compared to it. Thump thump. List left the Dragon Rider mode and jumped down from Leo's body. He stood on the turtle's shell. Leo turned into a ball of flames and returned to his body to rest. When the storm stops and the Lightning Dragon Turtle finishes its cultivation, Chi, get it to continue searching for a new island. This Dragon Turtle Island doesn't have much development value. As for those normal dragon turtles, maybe you can try to tame some of the bigger ones to see if they can be used to pull the ship. Actually, he still had some things he did not say. The next time he came, he should hunt a batch of dragon turtles to taste. If the meat was good and nutritious, it could be a rich source of meat for World of Warcraft. 3 days had passed since the Lightning Dragon Turtle finished its training. The expedition fleet had set sail again and continued to search for unknown areas. List and Chi continued to drive the Lightning Dragon Turtle to search for the islands it had been to. However, what made him very depressed was that the direction the Lightning Dragon Turtle chose several times was to the east toward the Devil's Sea. Most of its previous habitat was in the Devil's Sea, not in the coastal waters. The Devil's Sea was not within the scope of List's plan for the time being. If the peripheral islands could suffer a storm for 3 days and 3 nights, it went without saying how terrifying the interior of the Devil's Sea was. Therefore, at this stage, they mainly searched the coastal waters. It was not until Chi repeatedly denied it that the Lightning Dragon Turtle chose a new direction, which was towards the south and west. Relying on Qi's control of the speed of the water, after 7 hours, a new island was exposed to List's vision. It was a green island. It was not very big. However, there were the outlines of several islands around it. This is an archipelago. List's heart suddenly trembled. He was full of anticipation. Finding the archipelago was equivalent to finding the hope of building a country. Qi handed over a piece of grid paper. "Brother, this is the location map of this archipelago. On the drawing, with Black Horse Island as the starting point, and Dragon Turtle Island and this new archipelago, an obtuse triangle could be drawn, but the location of Dragon Turtle Island became an obtuse angle. When the islands were connected, Qi also marked the length, which looked very professional. The distance between Black Horse Island and Dragon Turtle Island was 1,850 kilometers, and Dragon Turtle Island was about 1,300 kilometers from the archipelago. Black Horse Island was 800 kilometers from the 3 islands, and the archipelago was about 2,500 kilometers from the 3 islands. In other words, the distance between Black Horse Island and the archipelago was close to 3,300 kilometers, which was far enough from the Sapphire Archipelago. Such a long distance, sailing alone, could take about 20 days if the journey was smooth. Qi, you take the Lightning Dragon Turtle to land on the island to check. Leo and I will go to the sky to see how many islands there are near this archipelago." "Okay." They rode the dragon into the air. Their field of vision suddenly widened, and one island after another came into view. This was indeed a huge archipelago. However, the more List flew, the more disappointed he became. More than 100 islands had been observed near the archipelago. However, none of the islands could match the size of Black Horse Island. These islands were arranged in an arc, sporadically distributed around the arc, stretching for 200 or 300 kilometers. It is impossible to build a country on such an archipelago. I don't know if the area of all the islands added up is as big as Red Crab Island. List returned to the position of the Lightning Dragon Turtle and expressed disappointment at the result of the trip. He hoped that the Lightning Dragon Turtle would continue to lead him to the new island. However, the Lightning Dragon Turtle said that the furthest it had been to was here, and the other living areas were on the other side of the Devil Sea. In this regard, List could only regretfully accept and make a new decision. "In that case, I will guide the expedition fleet over and let them use this archipelago as coordinates to continue to search around. Since there is a new archipelago, maybe there is a larger archipelago nearby." You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.